Darth Vader's story does not begin with the hiss of a respirator or the glow of a red blade. It begins in a quiet room, much like yours. The lights are low. The world outside is distant. Somewhere in the soft hum of your headphones, the galaxy is waiting. You might be lying back, eyes half closed. The gentle vibration of a fan or the distant rush of traffic blending into something that almost feels like the engines of a starship. The room is still. Your breathing is slow. In the darkness behind your eyelids, the stars of another galaxy begin to appear, one by one, as if the Force itself is settling around you. Tonight, this will be a single, unbroken story, from a mysterious child on a desert world to a dying father beneath the Death Star's shadow. We will follow Anakin Skywalker from his first breath to his last. The pace will be slow and steady. There is no need to stay fully awake, no pressure to catch every name, every planet, every detail. The story will keep moving gently forward, whether you are listening closely or drifting into sleep. On the surface, the films form the spine of this journey. The pod race on Tatooine, the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, the fire of Mustafar and the cold corridors of the Death Star. But the reason was simple. What you see on screen is only part of who Anakin truly was. As a result, many of the most important moments live outside the movies, in official series, novels, and other canon that fill the quiet spaces between battles. We will walk with the child who was conceived without a father, whose mother whispered that he was created by the will of the Force. We will sit beside the young Jedi in the temple, restless in his training, torn between duty to the Order and forbidden attachment to Padme. We will watch the Clone Wars grind him down, battle by battle, loss by loss, until fear of losing those he loves becomes stronger than any oath he ever swore. This is not only a story of duels and famous lines. It is a darker, more intimate path. We will pause in the moments when Anakin almost turned back, in the unspoken regrets after a harsh word to Obi-Wan, in the silent horror after the Jedi Temple massacre, in the lonely years inside armor, designed to keep him alive and in pain. For 1,000 generations, Jedi tried to master their fear and attachment. Anakin's tragedy is what happens when those wounds are left unseen. So, sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold. If you would like, you can share where you are listening from and what time of night it is for you. Whether it is late evening or the very edge of dawn, it is completely all right if you fall asleep long before we reach the end. Anakin's journey, from prophecy to fall to final redemption, will continue for you quietly in the background as the galaxy fades into dreams. So, before we descend into specific battles, councils, and visions, we need to pause on a single shape in the dark. For most beings in the galaxy, Anakin Skywalker does not exist. There is only Darth Vader. He is first a silhouette, tall, impossibly still, framed in smoke and shadow at the end of a corridor. Then the sound reaches you, that slow, mechanical breathing, steady and indifferent, like a machine that has forgotten how to be human. A red blade ignites, washing metal walls in crimson, and the world seems to narrow to that single line of light. Entire squads of soldiers have watched that blade appear and understood in that instant that their story was already over. Across star systems, his presence becomes a kind of warning. When his star destroyer drops out of hyperspace, governors sign surrender orders before the first turbo laser fires. When his name is spoken in a briefing room, voices fall quiet, as if the sound itself might summon him. For nearly 2 decades, he serves as the Emperor's enforcer, moving wherever resistance to the new order dares to appear. He hunts surviving Jedi from the ruins of their temple, crushes uprisings before they can become true rebellions, and turns local legends of hope into whispered tales of inevitable, unstoppable punishment. On paper, the reason was simple. Fear works. Fear keeps trade routes open, keeps planets paying tribute, keeps questions from being asked. As a result, the Empire allows the myth of Darth Vader to grow unchecked. Stories spread of a Sith Lord who can choke a man from across a room with an unseen hand, who can sense betrayal before it happens, who cannot be bargained with or escaped. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi had been the guardians of peace and justice. Now, in the minds of countless citizens, Vader is what comes when peace is broken. But that is only the view from outside the armor. The hidden truth is quieter and far more painful. Inside that black suit is a man who once stood in sunlight without a mask, a hopeful child who dreamed of freeing slaves, a loyal friend who laughed with his commander and his Padawan between missions, a hero of the Clone Wars whose blue blade once defended the very republic that the Empire replaced. He carries memories that no stormtrooper ever sees. A desert home, a mother's voice, the warmth of forbidden attachment, the silent halls of the Jedi Temple before the alarms began. Publicly, there is Darth Vader, the monster. Privately, there is Anakin Skywalker, the tragedy. The line between them is not as clear as the galaxy believes. Somewhere beneath the armor, the Force still moves through the same soul, torn between duty, anger, and a desperate need not to lose anyone ever again. To understand why the monster was possible, we must first meet the boy. So, sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold as we travel away from the shining core of the Republic to a hot, dusty world on the edge of known space, where a 9-year-old child looks up at the stars and quietly imagines leaving everything behind. That boy on the sand will one day wear black armor and breathe through a machine. He will be called a monster, a Sith, a weapon of the Empire. But before he becomes Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker lives an entire lifetime in shadows, moving through phases that seem separate on the surface, yet are quietly linked by the same deep fears and unhealed wounds. He begins on Tatooine, a slave child with no known father, born to Shmi Skywalker by what she calls the will of the Force. Life is harsh, but his heart is gentle. His first great attachment is to his mother, and his first dream is simple: to free them both. When Qui-Gon Jinn discovers him and speaks of a prophecy, the story shifts. The Chosen One leaves the dust behind, but the chains around his mind and his fear of loss do not break so easily. In the Jedi Order, Anakin is taken to the temple late, already shaped by love, by fear, and by the need to protect. Obi-Wan becomes his mentor and then his brother, yet their bond is strained by rules and expectations neither fully understands. The Clone Wars arrive and transform him into a war hero. As a general, he leads clones into battle, saves worlds, and gains a Padawan of his own in Ahsoka Tano. The galaxy sees a fearless champion. Underneath, the reason was simple. He cannot bear to fail the people who trust him. At the same time, his heart moves in a direction the Jedi forbid. He marries Padme Amidala in secret, choosing love over doctrine, attachment over detachment. Nightmares of her death echo the trauma of his mother's fate, and those visions become the quiet engine of his downfall. Palpatine steps into the space the Jedi leave empty, offering warmth, understanding, and forbidden knowledge. As a result, Anakin begins to believe that only power can keep the people he loves alive. His fall is marked by famous moments: the death of Mace Windu, the march on the temple, the fires of Mustafar, the birth of Darth Vader in a surgical theatre. Yet some of the most decisive steps happen in silence. A conversation in a Coruscant opera box, a whispered promise about saving Padme, a private decision to kneel. For 1,000 generations, Jedi were taught to let go. Anakin chooses again and again to hold on. The years that follow are lived behind a mask. Vader hunts Jedi, crushes rebellions, and serves an emperor who keeps him alive in constant pain. But even then, the story is not finished. The arrival of Luke Skywalker reopens the wound and the hope together, forcing the man inside the armor to confront the child he once was. In the end, he turns on his master, destroys the Sith, and dies in his son's arms, finally at peace. Across this video, each of these phases will unfold like chapters in a quiet storybook. We will move slowly from Tatooine's dust to the Death Star's throne room, pausing on the small moments: his hand on his mother's shoulder, a glance shared with Obi-Wan, a dream he cannot escape, a choice made alone in the dark. You can drift in and out and still feel the thread, because the same heart beats beneath every mask he wears. So sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold. We highly recommend exploring this journey from the very beginning, because the origin of the so-called Chosen One is stranger, more unsettling, and far more deliberate than most people remember. And the first sign of it appears long before any Jedi ship lands on Tatooine. The first sign appears on a forgotten world, far from the shining towers of any Jedi temple. The desert of Tatooine stretches in every direction, an ocean of sand under a sky that never quite cools. The twin suns sink slowly toward the horizon. Shadows lengthen across the dunes. Wind carves soft patterns on the surface, then erases them as if the planet refuses to remember. In the middle of this emptiness, a cluster of crude buildings clings to survival, and inside them, in cramped slave quarters, a different kind of storm is quietly forming. Shmi Skywalker's home is small. One narrow table, a few tools, a sleeping alcove where a mother and child share what little space the slavers have allowed them. The walls are close, but the feeling is not entirely hopeless. There is warmth here. Anakin has patched the broken things, sealed the drafts, turned scraps into comforts. He moves through the room with the restless energy of someone who does not accept the limits of his world, even though chains, visible and invisible, define every part of his day. By law and by custom, he is property. He runs errands for Watto, cleanse, hauls and repairs whatever the junk dealer drags in from the endless junkyard beyond the town. He comes home with sand in his hair and grease on his hands, his mind still turning over the shapes of engines and pod racers. The reason was simple. Machines, unlike people, made sense to him. He can feel how they want to fit together, as if the force itself is whispering in the gaps between gears. As a result, things that should not work anymore suddenly do. Yet the most unusual thing about Anakin is not what he can fix, but how he came to be. When Shmi quietly tells Qui-Gon Jinn that there was no father, she is not speaking in metaphor. She insists that Anakin was conceived by the will of the Force, that one day he was simply there within her, a life life without a human origin. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi have studied the Force, trained children, and recorded prophecies. But even they rarely encounter something this direct, this unsettling. Before any Jedi ever senses his potential, Anakin is already different. Other slaves dream of escape for themselves. He dreams of freeing his mother, his friends, everyone. He gives away food, helps where he can, and treats droids as if they are people. The galaxy will remember him for fear and fire. But his story begins with kindness in a place that does not reward it. Somewhere in the archives of the Order, there are old words about a chosen one, someone who will bring balance to the Force when darkness grows too strong. We highly recommend exploring how that prophecy twists over time, but for now, it is enough to say this. Powerful Jedi have been waiting quietly for someone like Anakin. They do not know his name yet. He does not know theirs. Still, the expectation already exists, like a distant echo. To be born for a purpose this large is both blessing and burden. Anakin never asks to be special. He never asks to be a symbol. He is a child who wants his mother to be safe, his friends to be free, and the sky to open just once without a price. But the Force has moved around him from the very beginning, and when the Jedi finally arrive on Tatooine, they are not just discovering a boy. They are stepping into a plan that started before he took his first breath. When the Jedi arrive, they do not just test the boy's blood and speak of prophecy. They give him something far more immediate, a chance to race. The Boonta Eve Classic is not a game. On Tatooine, it is a ritual of danger, spectacle, and quiet calculation, where lives are lost for the sound of engines and the promise of credits. For Anakin, it begins in stillness. The helmet settles over his head. It is heavy, pressing down on a child's neck and narrow shoulders. The world shrinks to the smell of fuel and hot metal, to the rough bite of sand against his skin, to the deep vibration that crawls up from the pod racer's engines into his bones. Around him, the crowd roars. Inside the cockpit, there is only breath. Pod racing is not meant for humans. The reason was simple. The speeds are too high, the turns too sharp, the margin for error too thin. Most species rely on extra limbs, redundant organs, or cybernetic enhancements to survive a single lap. A human child should not be able to react in time, should not be able to see the path before it arrives. Yet as the starting flag drops, time bends for Anakin. The engines scream forward, but his awareness stretches out, wide and calm. Rocks, wreckage, and rival racers slide into his perception before they appear in his field of view. His hands move first, and only afterward does his conscious mind understand why. To outside observers, it looks like impossible reflexes. To a Jedi, it is something else. It is the Force flowing through a boy who has never seen a temple, never known formal training, but who trusts an invisible current more than his own fear. He should be terrified. The track is a graveyard of shattered pods and burned metal. One mistake means death. But Anakin is thinking about parts, about a hyperdrive that will let these strangers leave the planet, about the way Qui-Gon looked at him, not as property, but as a person whose choice mattered. He races for freedom he cannot yet define, and for people he has only just met. As a result, the Boonta Eve becomes more than sport. It is an act of quiet selflessness from a child who has already learned to risk himself for others. The pod racer beneath him is far too powerful, a machine that should dominate its pilot. The story of Anakin's life is already there in miniature. incredible speed, constant risk, and a fragile attempt to remain in control of forces that can easily tear him apart. Each lap tightens that metaphor. The engines buck. Sabotage nearly kills him. Sandstorms rise without warning. Still, he holds the line, adjusting, adapting, refusing to let go. When he crosses the finish line, the arena erupts. To the crowd, it is a miracle victory. A human child defeating seasoned killers. They see credits won, records broken, a new legend for Tatooine's dust-choked taverns. But the most important change does not echo through the stands. It happens in the quiet space where a Jedi Master watches and understands that this boy is not an accident. The Force has begun to move around Anakin Skywalker in a way that, for 1,000 generations, has signaled destiny. So, as you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, remember that this single race does more than free a slave. It sets the course for a life that will race through war, love, and darkness at the same impossible speed. And somewhere beyond the desert sky, the wider galaxy is already shifting, waiting for the child in the pod racer to arrive. The race ends with cheers and credits, but for Anakin, the real gamble begins in the quiet that follows. Freedom is finally within reach, and the price, though he does not yet understand it, will shape the rest of his story. When Qui-Gon first offers him a way off Tatooine, Anakin hears only the bright surface of the promise. No more slavery, no more masters. A chance to learn the ways of the Force and become a Jedi, one of the guardians he has heard about in half-remembered tales. For a child born into chains, the reason was simple. This is everything he has ever dreamed of. But almost immediately, excitement collides with a new kind of fear, because freedom for him does not mean freedom for his mother. The deal is clear. He can leave. She cannot. In that moment, the twin suns seem to press down harder, as if the whole desert is listening to his answer. He wants to go. He does not want to leave her. That tension between desire and duty, between attachment and destiny, is the first real fracture in his heart. The farewell with Shmi is quiet, almost understated, and that makes it more powerful. She does not rage at Qui-Gon or beg to be included. Instead, she shows the calm strength that has carried them through years of hardship. She tells Anakin that his place is not on this planet, that his future lies out there in the wider galaxy. Her voice does not shake when she says it. She sends him away with love instead of chains. Anakin, though, clings to her as if he can hold time in place. He promises he will come back. He will become a Jedi. He will gain the power to free her. He will make this separation temporary through sheer will. This is not a casual vow. It is a child's first attempt to bargain with the universe, to make sure that love and loss never have to exist in the same sentence again. From the Jedi perspective, this moment looks very different. To them, this is the necessary beginning of his training, the step every youngling takes when they leave their families for the temple. For 1,000 generations, the Order has treated this kind of separation as normal, even healthy. But Anakin is not a toddler raised from birth within the temple walls. He is a boy with 9 years of memories, shared suffering, and unprocessed attachment. As a result, what the Jedi see as a standard transition becomes, for Anakin, a wound. It is his first lesson that following a path of higher duty means accepting unbearable personal loss. The fear that is born here is subtle but enduring. The belief that the people he loves can be taken away the moment he chooses his destiny. Later, when he dreams of his mother's pain, When visions of Padme's death haunt his sleep, they will all echo this first parting. The corridor to the ship on Tatooine, the feel of his small hand slipping from Shmi's, the sight of her growing smaller as he walks away. These images never fully leave him. They simply sink beneath the surface. So when he boards the ship as a newly freed boy, the scene looks triumphant. A slave has won his liberty. A future Jedi crosses the threshold into his new life. But somewhere inside, a quiet crack has already formed, an invisible line running straight through his ability to let go. And as the stars stretch into hyperspace for the first time before his eyes, something else begins stretching too, waiting to snap when the next loss arrives. Hyperspace fades, and the first thing Anakin sees of his new life is not war, not glory, but stone. The Jedi Temple rises clean and pale above Coruscant's endless city lights, its spires cutting into the clouds where smugglers and slaves never walk. Inside, the air is cool, quiet. The dust of Tatooine is gone. In its place are polished floors that mirror torchlight and towering statues of Jedi heroes from ages he has only heard in half-remembered stories. For 1,000 generations, this building has been the heart of the Order. Children usually arrive as infants, carried in on cradles, folded seamlessly into a tradition older than most governments in the galaxy. Anakin walks in under his own power, boots still scuffed from sand, mind still echoing with the sound of his mother's voice. He is a child, but he is not a blank slate. The reason was simple. His life has already taught him to cling. As he moves through the temple halls beside Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, robed figures turn to watch. Some sense the Force swirling around him like a storm front. Others simply see a boy far too old to be wearing that hopeful expression. Statues of ancient masters loom overhead, lightsabers carved in stone, as if silently asking whether he belongs among them at all. In the council chamber, the serenity feels sharper. The circle of masters sits high above the city, windows opening onto traffic lanes that look like distant rivers of light. Yoda's eyes close as he listens, not to Anakin's words, but to the tremor beneath them. Fear, attachment, a thread of anger so thin it is almost pity. Mace Windu's gaze is more direct, weighing every answer, every hesitation. By their standards, Anakin is not just unusual, he is a disruption to the entire training path. Under Jedi tradition, the rule is clear. Older children are not taken. They have formed bonds. They know loss. They have learned to say, mine. So when they question him about leaving his mother, about what he feels, he does not give the detached responses they expect. He speaks like a son. He is honest about his fear. That honesty condemns him. Yet there is another current in the room. Qui-Gon speaks of prophecy, of a chosen one conceived by the will of the Force itself, destined to bring balance. Some masters lean forward at that. Balance sounds noble, but no one can quite say what it would demand from them. To end the Sith, to change the Order, or to break everything first. From Anakin's side of the circle, it is simpler and more painful. He feels judged, too old, too attached, too strange. If they send him away now, leaving his mother will have been for nothing, and the invisible crack inside him will widen into something worse. He tries to sit still. He tries to be what they want, quiet, obedient, worthy. The council hesitates. They decline to train him. And then, almost immediately, the pattern shatters. Qui-Gon falls on Naboo. Obi-Wan, still barely a knight himself, kneels by his dying master and hears the last request. Promise me you will train the boy. It is reluctant. It is genuine. Obi-Wan does not fully trust the prophecy, but he loves Qui-Gon, and he feels a duty to this frightened child. As a result, when they return to the temple, Obi-Wan stands before the council and claims Anakin as his Padawan. Two lives, both shaped by loss, are bound together in that moment. It will become Anakin's greatest support and Obi-Wan's deepest heartbreak. So, as the doors of the training halls close behind them and the formal lessons begin, sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, because the temple that promises peace is already echoing with a future war between destiny and discipline. Inside the Jedi Temple, the rules come first and feelings come later. For 1,000 generations, this structure has kept the Order alive. The reason was simple. In a galaxy full of conflict, the Jedi believed only strict discipline could keep power from turning into tyranny. From their earliest days, younglings are taught that the Force must flow through a calm mind. Joy is allowed, but attachment is not. Love is acknowledged, but possession is forbidden. A Jedi is expected to feel compassion for all beings, while avoiding special bonds with any one person. Fear is treated as the first crack in the dam, the emotion that leads to anger, then hate, then suffering. Their lives are meant to be devoted to service and balance, not to personal desire. For children raised in the temple from infancy, this path feels natural. They do not remember parents' faces. They never learn to cling, so they never need to let go. But Anakin arrives different. He comes in as a child who has already loved and lost, who still dreams of his mother's voice on Tatooine. The standard lessons, repeated for centuries, do not account for someone whose heart is already full. Where the Jedi ideal is stillness, Anakin is motion. He is passionate, deeply loyal, quick to form bonds with anyone who shows him kindness. He cares intensely, and he does not see that as a flaw. When told that attachment is dangerous, he hears that caring is dangerous. When told to release his fear of loss, he remembers chains on his ankles and a mother left behind. As a result, the very virtues the Order praises, compassion, bravery, devotion, are tangled in him with the emotions they warn against. Small frictions appear early, quiet but persistent. During meditation, other Padawans sink easily into silence. Anakin fidgets, his mind racing ahead to action, to missions, to imagined rescues. He questions instructions meant to be accepted without argument. Rules about no possessions feel hollow when he still treasures a simple object from his childhood. The council, sensing his power and his fear, keeps him close yet slightly apart, granting him training but withholding full trust. He notices when promotions are discussed, when secrets are kept, when his opinions are gently set aside, a subtle distance grows. Systems built for stability often assume that everyone can bend the same way. Anakin bends, but he also strains. Each correction meant to smooth his rough edges instead reminds him that he does not quite belong. These tensions are not yet explosive. There are no shouted confrontations in the halls, no dramatic ultimatums. But the ground is shifting under his feet. The Order believes its rules will protect him from the dark. He begins to suspect those same rules will cost him everyone he loves. As we move into the years of war, sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold. Because the quiet pressure between Anakin and the Jedi is about to meet a galaxy on fire. The ground is shifting under his feet with the Jedi, and it shifts again the moment he sees her. Years have passed since Tatooine. The frightened child is now a tall, restless Padawan. The young queen is now a composed senator, carrying the weight of a wounded republic. Their reunion is quiet at first. Formal words, careful titles. Yet beneath the surface, both remember. She remembers the boy who promised to marry her and free all the slaves. He remembers the first person, besides his mother, who looked at him and saw something more than property. Time has turned those memories from simple kindness into something warmer and far more dangerous. From the moment Anakin's eyes meet Padmé's again, the change in him is immediate. His admiration for her poise and conviction deepens into open affection. His protective impulse, born on dusty streets where no one protected him, blossoms into an almost overwhelming need to keep her safe. The reason was simple. In a galaxy that still feels cold and conditional, she is one of the few constants of genuine warmth. The Jedi have clear teachings about this. Attachment is forbidden because attachment leads to fear, and fear leads to the dark side. For 1,000 generations, the Order has survived by asking its members to love broadly but not cling tightly, to care for the galaxy while letting go of individuals. But Anakin did not grow up in the temple. He did not learn to release what he loved. He learned that anything you failed to hold on to could be taken from you. As a result, his bond with Padmé does not form in the open light of the council chambers. It grows in the shadows between duties, shared conversations during long hyperspace jumps, small smiles exchanged after moments of danger, the way her hand briefly rests on his arm when blaster fire finally stops. These are not grand declarations. They are embers glowing quietly, feeding something he already knows he must hide. So he splits himself, outwardly the disciplined Padawan, repeating Jedi teachings about selflessness and non-attachment. Inwardly, the young man who lies awake, replaying the sound of her voice and the sight of her in danger. Every mission that puts her life at risk sharpens the conflict. The code tells him all beings are equal in the Force. His heart insists that if Padmé dies, nothing else in the galaxy will matter. He does not bring this turmoil to the Council. He barely brings it to Obi-Wan. Instead, he conceals it, hoping that secrecy will make it smaller. It does the opposite. Hidden feelings grow, and hidden fears grow faster. Somewhere far above Coruscant, a patient chancellor notices how often Anakin's gaze drifts toward one particular senator. Their quiet connection, meant to comfort him, is slowly becoming a thread. Soon, someone will start pulling on it, and the entire Order will feel it begin to unravel. War arrives quietly at first. A dispute on a distant world, a vote in the Senate, a single assassination attempt that fails by inches. Then, almost before the Jedi can understand what is happening, the galaxy is at war, and Anakin Skywalker is no longer just an unusual knight. He is exactly the kind of weapon the Republic suddenly believes it needs. The Clone Wars erupt after Geonosis, and the old balance shatters. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi had been peacekeepers, moving carefully, avoiding attachment to sides or armies. Now they stand at the head of legions, igniting blades as cannons roar around them. Anakin steps into this chaos as if he has been waiting for it his entire life. The reason was simple. War rewards boldness, and boldness is something he has never lacked. On the battlefield, his reputation grows with frightening speed. He leads fearless charges across open ground where any other general would wait. He dives into starfighter swarms with a child's joy and a veteran's precision, turning impossible odds into sudden victories. Clones under his command learn that he will fly through fire to pull them out of a trap, and that he will disobey a direct order if it means saving a single squad. As a result, they follow him with a loyalty that feels less like programming and more like genuine trust. Much of this era lives most vividly in the Clone Wars series, which we highly recommend exploring if you want to see Anakin as a full war hero rather than only a fallen knight. There, his bond with Obi-Wan deepens through shared campaigns and quiet moments between battles. His attachment to his Padawan, Ahsoka Tano, reveals a gentler teacher beneath the armor of command. You see him laugh with Rex, argue with the Council, and sit alone after another Pyrrhic victory, staring out at a star field that never seems to bring peace. War accelerates everything inside him. His force abilities sharpen under constant pressure. His instincts for strategy evolve into unorthodox plans that repeatedly outmaneuver separatist leaders, but the same intensity that makes him brilliant also pushes him further from the Jedi Order's calm center. Rules become suggestions. Council decisions become obstacles. If bending a code saves lives today, does it really matter what the Temple taught him years ago? Here, a quiet pattern interrupt appears in his story. The traits that make him beloved by his troops, his refusal to abandon them, his rage when innocents suffer, his willingness to do whatever it takes, are slowly teaching him that outcomes justify methods. That lesson wins battles. It also carves a subtle fault line between Anakin and the Council that no one fully recognizes yet. So sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold in your mind's eye. Because the very qualities that turn Anakin Skywalker into the Republic's shining general will, when pointed in a darker direction, make him one of the most dangerous beings the galaxy has ever known. On the surface, Anakin and Obi-Wan are a simple pairing. Master and apprentice, general and commander, two Jedi cutting a path through a burning galaxy. Underneath, their bond is far more complicated. It is one of the quiet, hidden stories that explains why Anakin's eventual fall hurts as much as it does. Obi-Wan never asked to raise a child of prophecy. He was still grieving Qui-Gon, still proving himself to the Council when he promised to train the boy his master believed in. The reason was simple. Obi-Wan saw that taking Anakin as his Padawan was the last thread connecting him to Qui-Gon's faith. As a result, he stepped into a dual role he was not fully prepared for, acting as both instructor and surrogate older brother to someone already more powerful in the Force than he was. Under Jedi tradition, that dynamic was risky. Obi-Wan tried to follow the Order's standard training, the same rules and routines used for initiates raised in the Temple from infancy. Anakin was different. He arrived with deep attachment, fear of loss, and a lifetime of hardship behind his eyes. Obi-Wan sensed it, but his answer was discipline, structure, and obedience, because that was what had shaped him. Yet within that structure, real warmth grew. During the Clone Wars, their campaigns are filled with small, human moments. Shared jokes in the gunship before a landing, exasperated glances when a plan goes wrong, the easy rhythm of two fighters who can predict each other's moves without speaking. On Christophsis, on Geonosis, on countless unnamed worlds, they move as one in battle, lightsabers crossing and separating like parts of a single mind. That camaraderie is not an illusion. Obi-Wan trusts Anakin with his life, again and again. Anakin returns that trust, saving his former master from assassin droids, separatist traps, and even the invisible weight of command. To the clones, they look like brothers, To the galaxy, they are heroes. But inside that bond, friction slowly builds. Obi-Wan's instinct is to hold the line, follow the council, respect the code, accept decisions that feel cold. Anakin experiences the same choices as abandonment and restraint. He believes Obi-Wan is holding him back from the rank of master, from secret knowledge, from the freedom to protect those he loves. Neither of them truly says this aloud. Psychologically, they are both trapped by the same culture. The Jedi teach calm, non-attachment, and emotional control. There is little room to say, "I am afraid," or "I need you." Obi-Wan loves Anakin deeply, but expresses it through correction and dry patience. Anakin loves Obi-Wan, but hears criticism where concern is meant. Unspoken doubts turn into small, hard resentments. So by the time the war nears its end, their connection is strong and strained at once. It is precisely this mixture that will make their eventual meeting on Mustafar not just a duel between a fallen Jedi and his former master, but the shattering of a family bond that, for 1,000 generations, the Order never truly knew how to protect. That failure to protect a fragile bond inside the Jedi Order will echo again in a different relationship during the Clone Wars. This time, Anakin will not be the child in need of guidance. He will be the one asked to guide. When Ahsoka Tano is first assigned to him as a Padawan, Anakin resents it. He sees her as a distraction from the war, an obligation forced on him by the Council that already doubts him. The reason was simple. In his mind, he was still the learner, still the outsider trying to prove himself. Yet Ahsoka arrives at the temple and on the battlefield with energy, trust, and a stubborn confidence that quietly disarms him. Under Jedi tradition, a Padawan is expected to mirror the Master's discipline. Instead, Ahsoka mirrors Anakin's recklessness. She charges ahead, questions orders, and forms fast attachments to clones and civilians alike. At first, this frustrates him. Then it becomes a mirror. He watches her make the same impulsive choices he once made, and he hears his own arguments coming out of her mouth. As a result, the act of correcting her begins to soften him, just slightly. He learns to be more patient because she will not grow by fear alone. He becomes more protective because her life is now a silent measure of his own worth. In rare moments of quiet, he grows more introspective, wondering what kind of man he is teaching her to become in a galaxy that seems to reward aggression. Their bond settles into something that is not quite father and daughter, not quite master and student. She is his Padawan, but also a younger sister in the Force. That is why the accusation cuts so deeply. When Ahsoka is framed for a bombing at the Jedi Temple, the Council responds with distance instead of trust. They strip her of rank. They allow her to be hunted through the lower levels of Coruscant as if she were already guilty. Anakin, who has seen her compassion on 100 battlefields, is almost alone in insisting on her innocence. He clears her name in the end, exposing the true traitor. But the damage is already done. The Council offers to take her back, as though the ordeal were simply another trial in her training. Ahsoka looks at the men who were supposed to be wise, and she quietly refuses. She walks away from the Order, from the Temple, and from the only life she has ever known. Anakin is devastated, but he does not scream. He stands in the hallway and feels something break as she disappears into the city. Someone he loved and believed in no longer trusts the institution he has sacrificed everything for. Her departure becomes another wound, another proof that the Jedi can cast aside even the loyal when fear and protocol demand it. Later, when he weighs the Council's lives against Padmé's, this memory will be there, silent and heavy. If they could abandon Ahsoka, what else might they abandon? Sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, because the next loss will not end with someone walking away. It will end with fire. That fire does not begin with Ahsoka. It begins years earlier, in the sand and shadow of a Tusken camp on Tatooine. Anakin returns to his homeworld not as a frightened child, but as a Jedi Padawan and war hero in the making. He has a lightsaber, he has training, he has the authority of the Order behind him, but none of that matters when he finds Shmi missing, taken by Tusken raiders, her fate unknown in the endless desert. The power he once dreamed would free everyone he loved suddenly feels small against the horizon. He searches anyway. He tracks the raiders to their encampment, slips through the perimeter, and finds his mother bound and broken in a Tusken hut. For a moment, the galaxy narrows to two people. She recognizes him. She tries to speak. He holds her as the life drains away, helpless to stop it, just as helpless as the boy who watched her remain a slave when he left with Qui-Gon. The Force is with him, but it does not save her. Her body goes still. Something inside him does the opposite. It erupts. The reason was simple. The pain is too much, and he has never been taught what to do with pain except push it away or overpower it. So he reaches for what he knows. He ignites his blade and falls upon the camp in a storm of red-gold light and screaming sand. Warriors die first, then the women, then the children. In that massacre, we see one of his first clear, conscious steps into the dark side. Not a slip, not an accident, but a choice made while drowning in grief and fear. For 1,000 generations, Jedi had preached serenity, yet their newest chosen champion is learning that rage feels like control when everything else has been taken from him. As a result, the Force itself becomes tied in his mind to the idea that love and slaughter can sit side by side. When he returns, the Jedi do not truly meet him where he is. Obi-Wan senses the turmoil, but leans on discipline, on duty, on moving forward. The Council does not gather him in the temple and help him name the horror of what he has done. His confession to Padmé is raw, but even there, the focus becomes secrecy and survival, not healing. The wound is covered, not cleaned. Years later, the past returns in a different shape. Anakin begins to dream of Padmé, not alive and laughing, but dying in childbirth, reaching out to him with the same fading strength Shmi had in that Tusken hut. He wakes in the dark, breath ragged, the old helplessness pressing on his chest. The nightmare is new, but the feeling is not. Those visions are more than prophecy. They are echoes. Each one tells him that if he follows the Jedi path, if he accepts loss again, he will watch another woman he loves die in his arms. So when someone finally offers him forbidden power to change that fate, the choice does not appear in a vacuum. It rises from the sand, from Shmi's last breath, from the bodies in that camp. Sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, because every desperate bargain he makes for Padmé is haunted by a ghost that never left Tatooine. When the past is not healed, it does not disappear. It simply waits and finds a new face to wear. That ghost takes on a gentler shape on Naboo. The war pauses for a moment. The galaxy feels far away. And in a quiet lakeside retreat, Anakin and Padmé decide to do something that no Jedi and Senator are supposed to do. The ceremony itself is almost unreal. No crowded temple, no grand hall on Coruscant, just a balcony over still water, the fading light of Naboo's sun, and two droids as witnesses. R2D2 hums softly. C3PO stands awkward and golden. And between them, Anakin and Padme speak vows that bind them more tightly than any order or oath they have ever known. It looks like a dream, because in a way, it has to be one. For Anakin, this marriage becomes an anchor. The Jedi see him as the chosen one, a weapon of the Force shaped by prophecy and training. The Republic sees him as a general, a symbol in armor. Padme sees him as a person. When he returns from the front, exhausted and stained by battle, the small apartment she keeps on Coruscant becomes a secret harbor. Here he is not Commander Skywalker. He is simply Anakin, the child from Tatooine, who finally has a family of his own. The reason was simple. The Jedi had told him again and again that attachment leads to fear, and fear leads to the dark side. Anakin hears the words, but his life has taught him something else. Every time he lets go, he loses someone. So he clings to Padme as proof that he can have both duty and love, that he can save the galaxy and still come home to warmth. As a result, the marriage is not just romantic, it is theological for him. It is his quiet rebellion against the Temple's oldest rule. But rebellion, carried in secret, has a cost. Anakin must lie to Obi-Wan, to the Council, to the clones who trust him with their lives. He deflects questions, hides visits, buries his reactions whenever Padme appears in the Senate. In public, he must stand still when she is in danger, because any visible panic would reveal too much. The strain is constant. Every briefing, every mission, carries the background noise of one unspoken fear. If they find out, they will take her away. Padme feels that pressure as well. She believes in his goodness, remembers the kind-hearted child who wanted to help a stranger on Tatooine, and she trusts that when the war ends, they can step into the light together. She imagines resigning from the Senate, Anakin leaving the Order, or the Council finally accepting that love does not have to mean possession. Yet as the conflict drags on, she watches him grow sharper, more volatile, more willing to bend rules that once would have troubled him. In quiet conversations, she tries to draw him back. She speaks about democracy, about mercy, about the cost of power. He listens, but the divide between Jedi doctrine and his private life keeps widening. You can almost feel the tension building, like a wire pulled tighter with each new crisis. This hidden bond was meant to protect their love. Instead, it isolates them. It gives Palpatine something the Jedi do not even know exists, a single point of leverage that reaches deeper than any code or prophecy. When visions of Padme's death begin to haunt Anakin's sleep, that secret marriage will no longer be a sanctuary. It will become the doorway through which the dark side finally steps in. So, as you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, remember this balcony on Naboo. It is beautiful. It is sincere. And it is the quiet, fragile hinge on which the fate of the entire galaxy will soon turn. From that quiet balcony on Naboo, the story drifts forward to the polished halls of the Republic Executive Building, where another relationship has been growing in the shadows. In public, Chancellor Palpatine is a gentle, reassuring figure, a kindly leader who always seems to have time for one particular Jedi Knight. In private, behind patient smiles and soft words, he is something else entirely. Palpatine is Darth Sidious, the war that consumes the galaxy, the clones, the droids. the constant emergencies that pull Anakin away from any hope of peace, all flow from his hidden hand. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi believed they could sense the dark side before it reached the heart of the Republic. Now, the Sith Lord they failed to detect walks the same corridors as the Council and invites their most gifted child to visit him alone. Anakin comes as a hero of the Clone Wars, but also as a young man who feels strangely out of place in his own order. The Council hesitates to grant him the rank of Master. The Temple whispers about his temper, his attachments, his unconventional training of Ahsoka. Palpatine listens to all of this, and then does the opposite. He praises Anakin's instincts. He calls his defiance insight. He tells him that the Jedi are lucky to have someone so powerful. Under Jedi tradition, humility is a shield. Power is to be tempered, not celebrated. Palpatine carefully inverts this. Over quiet dinners and private briefings, he suggests that the Council is cautious because they are afraid. They do not understand Anakin's connection to the Force. They do not trust his visions. The reason was simple, he implies. Small minds always resist change. As a result, Anakin begins to look at the same council chambers with new suspicion. In this space, Palpatine becomes what the Temple never quite managed to be for him, a place where every doubt can be spoken aloud. When Anakin is frustrated with Obi-Wan, he vents to the Chancellor. When he worries that the war is being mismanaged, Palpatine nods and agrees. When he confesses his fear of losing the people he loves, the older man does not quote Jedi doctrine. He simply understands. A contrast forms, slow but dangerous. The Jedi ask for patience. Palpatine urges action. The Jedi warn that attachment leads to suffering. Palpatine calls love a strength. The Order teaches that rules exist to protect the galaxy from the dark. Palpatine repeats gently that some rules are only chains, placed on those who might truly change things. So when the nightmares of Padmé's death finally begin to tear through Anakin's sleep, he will not run first to the council chambers or the meditation rooms of the temple. He will remember the one voice that never told him to let go, never asked him to accept loss. And as you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, keep that voice in mind, because the next time Palpatine speaks to Anakin about the dark side, it will not sound like a threat at all. It will sound like hope. So when Palpatine finally invites Anakin to the galaxy's opera house, it is not a casual outing. It is the next movement in a composition he has been writing since the child from Tatooine first set foot in the temple. The performance itself is strange and ethereal, luminous shapes rising and falling in the air like living sculptures, while the rest of the audience watches in polite silence. The lighting is dim, the sound is muted. The galaxy's elite sit in their private boxes, but for our purposes, they may as well be shadows. The reason was simple. This scene is not about the show on the stage. It is about the quiet conversation in the dark, where a chancellor leans toward a Jedi Knight and offers him a different kind of story. Palpatine does not begin with a threat. He begins with a legend. Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? The name hangs in the air like another of those floating figures. He speaks of a Sith Lord so powerful and so knowledgeable in the dark side of the Force that he could influence the midi-chlorians themselves, creating life, preventing those he cared about from dying. For 1,000 generations, Jedi tales have warned against such things, wrapping forbidden techniques in silence and caution. Palpatine does the opposite. He unwraps the idea slowly, almost gently, turning it in the light so Anakin can see every facet. A Sith who could stop death. A master who learned to command the very boundary between life and the void. This is not random lore. It is precisely tailored temptation. Anakin sits there already, carrying the image of his mother dying in his arms, already waking from dreams of Padme, gasping for breath. His attachment has become a wound that never closes. As a result, the promise that someone, somewhere, once learned to deny death itself does not sound abstract. It sounds like a solution. Palpatine never actually confirms that this power still exists. He never explains how it works or whether he truly possesses it. Instead, he plants a possibility. Perhaps the Jedi are not telling you everything. Perhaps the dark side holds the key to saving the person you love. It is a hook, carefully set, that will pull tight the next time Anakin feels Padme slipping away. Here, the contrast between orders becomes stark. The Jedi withhold dangerous knowledge because they fear what it will do to a mind shaped by loss. Their training tells them that some doors, once opened, do not close. The Sith dangle the same doors like bait. Love becomes leverage. Curiosity becomes a chain. And if you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, you can see how quietly the trap closes. The opera ends. The crowd disperses, but the idea remains, echoing under every vision and every whispered warning, waiting for the moment when hope and horror finally become the same path. The idea follows him back to the Jedi Temple. The music of the opera fades, but Palpatine's suggestion does not. Anakin returns to the marble corridors and high council chambers, with a new possibility burning quietly in the back of his mind. That the Jedi will not be able to save Padme, and that someone else might. When the summons comes, it feels routine on the surface. Another meeting, another briefing. But the room he walks into is already different. The council is waiting. Obi-Wan, Yoda, Mace Windu at the center. Their faces are calm, but the air carries a low tension, like a storm about to break over the galaxy. They inform him that the Chancellor has requested he be made his personal representative on the council. No Jedi has ever been seated this way. For 1,000 generations, membership was earned through mastery, service, and the quiet recognition of one's peers. Now the request comes from outside the order, from a politician who has taken a personal interest in a single knight. On the surface, it is an honor. He is told he will sit on the council. He is given a chair in the highest circle of Jedi authority. Yet when the words land, they arrive with a fracture. The reason was simple, at least to the masters. They do not trust the influence that surrounds him, so they break with their own tradition. They grant him a seat, but they deny him the rank of master. For Anakin, the moment is a public unmasking. He has led legions in battle. He has survived trials that would have ended other Jedi during training. The temple whispers of his power with the Force, of his victories as a general, of the prophecy that once hovered over him as a child. To be told, in front of the very figures who shaped his life, that he is good enough to sit with them, but not to stand as their equal, cuts deeper than the words themselves. Anger rises first, then confusion, then a familiar, hollow certainty that no sacrifice will ever be enough. The council's decision confirms what his fears have been whispering for years, that he will always be the outsider, the one the order uses but never fully embraces. As a result, every loss, every reprimand, every unanswered question about his mother and now Padme folds into this single humiliation. From the Council's perspective, the danger is real. They sense his attachment to the Chancellor. They see how Palpatine has stepped into spaces their own teachings left empty, so they take another step that widens the gap. They ask Anakin to spy on the very man who placed him here, to listen, to report, to become, quietly, an agent against his oldest political ally. It is an impossible position. One authority asks for loyalty, the other demands suspicion. In the silence between those commands, Palpatine's narrative settles in. That the Jedi are hypocritical, that they fear his potential, that they will never trust him with the power to truly save anyone. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, you can see how this attempt to contain him instead tightens the snare, setting the stage for the next irreversible choice. The snare tightens in silence, and in that silence, the visions begin. They do not arrive as clear hollows or distant omens. They come as drowning. Anakin dreams of Padme the way he once dreamed of his mother. First, there is only sound, her breathing ragged and shallow, a whisper of his name that seems to echo through the Force and then tear away from him. Then there is light, harsh, white, surgical light, washing out the edges of her face until he can see only fear and pain. He runs to her. His steps are heavy, as if the temple floors have turned to sand again, dragging at his legs the way the dunes of Tatooine once did when he was a child. Every stride feels slower than the last. The distance does not shrink. Padme reaches out a hand, fingers trembling, and the space between them stretches instead of closing. Time itself seems to recoil. In these visions, he always arrives too late. She is crying out. She is gasping for air. She is lying still. The images flicker, repeat, and overlap, like an echo that refuses to fade. The reason was simple. His mind is stitching the future to the past, turning one unbearable loss into a warning about the next, because he has seen this before. He has knelt beside a dying woman on a rough workbench in a Tuscan camp, listening as her breath failed and her hand went limp in his. Shmi's face and Padme's face merge in his nightmares until he cannot tell where one ends and the other begins. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi taught that attachment leads to fear, and fear leads to suffering. For Anakin, attachment has already led to a grave he can never forget. So when he wakes in the temple, heart racing, the sheets twisted, he does not see a neutral prophecy. He sees a second chance. The Force is not warning him to accept death. It is pleading with him to prevent it. At least, that is how it feels to him. He goes to the Jedi for help. Their answer is calm, practiced, and devastating. They tell him that all things die, that visions are unreliable, that he must let go of his fear and trust the will of the Force. On paper, this is wise. In his ears, it is a cold refusal to reach for Padme's outstretched hand. When they say, "Let go," he hears, "Do nothing." Palpatine offers the opposite. Not direct promises, not yet, but suggestions. Stories of ancient Sith who could influence life and death. Hints that the dark side is not merely destructive, but creative, able to save those one loves from the very fate Anakin sees each night. As a result, the Jedi path begins to look like passive surrender, while the Sith path glows with the illusion of agency and hope. He does not know it, but he is already standing at the edge of a decision that will define the rest of his life. The dreams tighten their grip, the voices around him pull in opposite directions, and somewhere very close ahead, a single choice waits, patient and merciless. That single choice steps out of the shadows, In a quiet opera box above the lights of Coruscant, the war rages, the Jedi are scattered, and Anakin sits alone with the one man who has never turned him away from his fear. The music swells below them, strange and distant, while above it all, Palpatine begins to tell a different kind of story. Not about the Republic, not about politics, about the Sith. He speaks of Darth Plagueis the Wise, a Sith Lord who could influence the midichlorians to create life, who could keep the people he loved from dying. It sounds like myth, like something that should have belonged to legends told in the temple for 1,000 generations, not whispered by a head of state in the Chancellor's private viewing box. But the reason was simple. Palpatine is not simply a friendly patron. He is testing how far Anakin is willing to follow the promise of power. Later, when the Council refuses to grant him the rank of Master and asks him to spy, that promise returns. Anakin's attachment to Padme, his memories of his mother's death, and his new visions of Padme's suffering all converge into a single, unbearable knot of fear. So when he confronts Palpatine in his office, and the Chancellor calmly reveals the truth, that he is the Sith Lord the Jedi have been hunting, everything stops. The revelation lands with a kind of silence. Anakin's first reaction is revulsion. This man has sat in the heart of the Republic, guiding the war, guiding the Jedi, all while serving the very darkness they have been fighting. His hand moves to his lightsaber. His training tells him to strike, or at least to arrest. But Palpatine does not reach for a weapon. He reaches for Anakin's terror. With almost gentle words, he reframes the confession as an opportunity. He claims he alone knows the pathways to save Padme from death, that the Jedi would never teach such things, that the dark side of the Force is not evil, only misunderstood. Statement, then contrast. The monster Anakin has sought is also, perhaps, the only person who can prevent his greatest loss. Anakin stands between two lives, duty to the Jedi Order on one side, the desperate hope of saving his wife on the other. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold in your mind, you can almost feel the way the room seems to tilt around him as a result, how every lesson from the temple collides with every nightmare he has ever had. He does make the right choice, for now. He leaves Palpatine alive, but goes to Mace Windu and reports that the Chancellor is a Sith Lord. Even here, though, the decision is fragile. His voice carries hesitation. His mind is already clouded by conflicting loyalties, already imagining what will happen if Mace kills the only man who might save Padme. This is not the fall. Not yet. It is the last narrow ledge before the drop, the moment when one more choice, whether to trust the Jedi or the Sith, will decide the shape of Anakin Skywalker's fate, and the fate of the galaxy with him. And as Mace Windu walks toward the Chancellor's office, Anakin's final test quietly begins. Mace Windu does not walk alone. When he moves toward the Chancellor's office, 3 of the Order's most capable Jedi Masters fall in beside him. Kit Fisto, Agen Kola, Saezi Teen. Their intent is clear and quietly absolute. They are not coming to debate policy. They are coming to arrest the Supreme Chancellor and end the Sith threat at its source. Under Jedi tradition, confronting a Sith Lord of this magnitude would have involved the full council, careful planning, and perhaps even temple consultation. Tonight, there is only urgency. The war is reaching its breaking point, and the man who has guided the Republic for 1,000 generations in the public imagination is, in truth, the shadow behind it. The reason was simple. If they moved slowly, he would move first. In the Chancellor's office, events unfold with terrible speed. Sabers ignite, masters fall. Palpatine reveals the ferocity he has hidden for years, and the room becomes a storm of light and sound. But we do not stay with that chaos. We stay with Anakin, alone in the council chamber, feeling each death through the Force like distant thunder, knowing something irreversible has begun without him. By the time he reaches the office, the storm has broken. The duel is over. The Sith Lord is on his back, his face warped and burned by his own reflected lightning, his body crumpled against the sill of the great window. Mace stands above him, blade at the Chancellor's throat, expression set in that hard, uncompromising calm Anakin has always both respected and feared. Palpatine is no longer the confident leader. He is coughing, whimpering, begging for his life. This is the image that sears itself into Anakin's mind. Not the hidden manipulator, but a weakened old man at the mercy of a Jedi master. In that frozen moment, every thread of his story pulls tight. He hears Padmé's voice. He feels his mother's fingers slipping from his hand on Tatooine. He remembers the Council's refusal to trust him, their decision to move without him, the echo of Palpatine's warning that the Jedi will betray the Republic and seize control. Fear speaks first. If Mace kills him, the secret of cheating death dies with him. Attachment follows, heavy and irresistible. Padmé's life seems to hang on the edge of Mace's blade. As a result, the line between justice and murder blurs in Anakin's perception. Is this protection of the galaxy, or a Jedi coup, just as his mentor described? He pleads. He hesitates. The Force swirls around all three men, heavy with possibility. Then Mace makes his choice. He's too dangerous to be left alive. The saber lifts for the final strike. Anakin moves. His own blade ignites with that familiar snap hiss, but this time it is not to defend a Jedi. In a single, desperate arc, he cuts through Mace Windu's wrist. The purple lightsaber spins away into the night, and in the same breath, Palpatine rises, unleashed, hurling lightning into the unarmed master and casting him through the shattered window into the darkness below. Silence follows. Glass settles. The office smells of ozone and burning. Anakin stares at the empty window, at his own trembling hands, and understands dimly that in trying to prevent one death, he has condemned countless others. He has crossed a line he cannot uncross, and the next step will not be back toward the temple, but down into a new name. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, this is the point where Anakin Skywalker begins to vanish, and something colder takes his place. He does not walk into the darkness so much as sink to his knees in it. The office is dim now. Outside, Coruscant still hums with light and movement, unaware that the galaxy has just shifted around a single trembling man. Anakin kneels on the polished floor before the Chancellor's desk, but the man behind it is no longer simply the leader of the Republic. The reason was simple. The mask has dropped. Sidious sights in shadow, his face still twisted from the lightning that killed Mace Windu, his voice low and almost gentle as he speaks to the broken Jedi at his feet. Anakin's eyes are wide, rimmed with tears and smoke. His hands, which only hours ago held a green lightsaber as a defender of the temple, now hang open and empty. He stares at them as if they belong to someone else. He has helped murder a Jedi master. He has betrayed the order that rescued him as a child. And yet, when Sidious leans forward and promises that together they can unlock powers the Jedi have denied for 1,000 generations. Anakin does not rise. He bows his head lower. Sidious names this submission a rebirth. Henceforth, you shall be known as Darth Vader. The word moves slowly through the room, heavy and deliberate. It is framed as a gift, a new identity fit for the power Anakin craves, a path beyond the limits of his old training. But Anakin's face does not light with triumph. It tightens with grief and horror, as if each syllable lands like another body on the temple floor. Inside, he is already building a story he can live with. If he embraces this darkness now, if he learns every secret Sidious hinted at in those quiet conversations during the war, then later he can bend it back toward the light. He tells himself that with this power, he will save Padme from the death the Force has shown him. As a result, the slaughter he has just taken part in becomes, in his mind, a terrible down payment on a better future. He believes he is sacrificing his soul for love. He believes that by becoming Darth Vader, he can one day reshape the galaxy into a place where no one he cares about will ever die helplessly again, where no mother or wife will be lost the way Shmi was on Tatooine. What he does not see is the quiet irony the Force is already weaving around him. The very path he has chosen will suffocate the woman he is trying to protect. The name Darth Vader does not transform him instantly into the armored figure the galaxy will come to fear. It is the first step in a long, painful process, a seed planted in this dark office that will grow through fire, metal, and years of obedience. For now, he is still Anakin kneeling, clinging to the hope that this nightmare can be redeemed. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, you will see how quickly that hope is tested on Mustafar. That hope does not fade slowly. It is seized, twisted, and weaponized in a matter of hours. Anakin leaves the Chancellor's office not as an uncertain Jedi Knight, but as a newly named Sith apprentice carrying a single terrible assignment: end the Jedi Order before they can ever threaten his new master or the future he believes he is saving. Order 66 is the mechanism that makes this possible. On the surface, the clones are loyal soldiers, shaped by years of training and shared battles with their Jedi generals. They laugh with them, they bleed beside them. But buried deep in their minds is a hidden command, an inhibitor protocol planted long before the war began. With a single calm sentence, Palpatine activates it, and the Republic's army turns, almost instantly, against the very Jedi who led them. The result is quiet at first. A message transmitted, a phrase acknowledged. Then, across the galaxy, blaster fire erupts in places that once felt safe. On Utapau, on Felucia, on Maijito, Jedi who had fought for 1,000 generations of ideals fall in seconds, gunned down by troops they trusted. The reason was simple from the Sith point of view. Remove the Guardians of Peace, and no one can resist the new empire that will rise from the Republic's corpse. In the heart of Coruscant, the story narrows to a single, haunting image. The Jedi Temple stands against the night sky, its spires familiar to Anakin from his own childhood. He approaches not as the gifted boy who arrived late to training, but as the enforcer of a new order. His hood is raised, his face is set. Behind him marches a legion of clone troopers, armor gleaming, rifles ready. Inside, the halls are the same ones where he once sparred with friends, where masters corrected his form and tried to soothe his fear and attachment. Now, blue light cuts the darkness as his blade ignites. The same weapon that defended clones on 100 worlds now turns on librarians, sentries, and teachers. As a result, the temple, once a sanctuary, becomes a battlefield. Then the pattern breaks. He steps into a room not filled with warriors, but with children. Younglings gather around him, relief in their eyes. They call him Master Skywalker and ask what they should do. In that moment, they see a protector. The audience sees something else. This is the point where Anakin's actions fully align with the name Darth Vader. He tells himself it is necessary to end a corrupt order, necessary to prove his loyalty, necessary to build a new world where Padme and their unborn child can live without fear. But the quiet horror is simple. To save his family, he destroys the very guardians of peace he once longed to join. And as the temple burns, the same betrayal plays out on countless worlds. One by one, Jedi fall. In a single orchestrated night, the age of the Republic dies, and the galaxy slips into the shadow of an empire that has only just begun to reveal itself. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, you will see that this is not the end of Anakin's fall, but only the midpoint. Mustafar still waits, and with it, the final breaking of the man he used to be. Mustafar waits at the edge of everything Anakin has known. The planet is a wound in the galaxy, a world of open magma and burning sky. Rivers of lava crawl like slow, molten veins beneath black industrial platforms, while towers of smoke rise toward a starless ceiling. The air itself seems to burn, and the reason was simple. This is a place where things are melted down and remade, or destroyed. Anakin arrives as Darth Vader in all but name. His ship cuts through the ash-filled atmosphere and settles on a spindly landing platform above the fire. Inside, the separatist leaders huddle in a fortress of durasteel and greed, believing they have escaped judgment yet again. They do not know that the war is already over. They do not know that the man walking toward them has come as executioner, not guardian. What follows is not a battle. It is a methodical slaughter. Anakin moves through the darkened corridors with his lightsaber ignited, blue light flashing against metal walls and terrified faces. Newt Gunray, Rune Harko, the surviving members of the council that once manipulated the Republic, one by one, they fall. In his mind, this is a necessary act, the final cut that will end the Clone Wars, secure peace, and prove to his new master that he is worthy. As a result, every scream becomes proof that he is doing what must be done. Outside, the lava roars like a distant storm. Inside, Anakin stands alone among bodies and flickering holoprojectors, staring out at the fire. He believes he has taken control at last. He believes this is the price of saving Padme. The force around him, however, is twisted and turbulent, full of fear and rage where there once was conflict and compassion. When Padme's silver ship breaks through the smoke and descends toward the platform, it feels almost like a memory from another life. She runs to him across the durasteel, the heat shimmering between them, her hand on the child she carries. Her words are simple and desperate. Leave all of this. Run away with me. They can go somewhere beyond the reach of the Jedi, beyond Palpatine, beyond war. For 1,000 generations, Jedi were taught to let go of attachment. Anakin now clings to it with everything he has left. But the seeds of paranoia have already taken root. As they argue, as Padme begs him to see what he has become, a figure appears at the top of the ramp behind her. Obi-Wan steps out of the ship, framed by smoke and light. In that instant, every wound in Anakin's life is reopened. He does not see a mentor who followed out of concern. He sees a conspirator. To him, Padme has brought his old master here to kill him. The shift is sudden, but it has been building for years. Words turn to accusation. Accusation turns to rage. In a burst of anger, Anakin reaches out through the Force and closes his hand around Padme's throat, lifting her from the ground as she gasps for breath. The man who once swore to protect her is now the one who harms her, his terror of losing her twisting into the very act that may cause that loss. It is the darkest fulfillment of his fear. Obi-Wan's shout breaks the moment, and Padme collapses, unconscious, on the platform. The lava surges below, throwing red light up onto two figures who once moved in perfect harmony. Master and apprentice, brother and brother. Now they stand facing one another at the edge of the world, sabers not yet ignited, but every word and choice that led here hanging in the air between them. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, this is the point where you can feel the last pieces of Anakin Skywalker straining against what he has done. The duel has not yet begun, but the real battle between who he was and what he has chosen to become is already raging beneath the surface, waiting to erupt with the same unstoppable force as the lava below. And then that pressure beneath the surface finally breaks. Blue light ignites against blue light, and the quiet tension explodes into motion. They move together at first, like a memory of old training sessions in the temple. Blades tracing familiar lines, feet following steps each has seen 100 times. But every strike now has weight. Every parry carries the force of betrayal, of a war just ended in blood, and of a friendship that cannot survive what Anakin has done. Their styles mirror their histories. Obi-Wan is measured and defensive, conserving energy, letting the environment guide his choices. Anakin is aggressive, driving forward, pressing every advantage, his power flaring in sudden, brutal bursts. For years, this combination made them unstoppable on battlefields across the galaxy. Now, the same habits turn inward, each man instinctively countering the other's favorite moves, each anticipating feints learned during long nights of shared training. They crash through the control room, onto narrow catwalks, then out into the open furnace of Mustafar. Platforms rise and fall above rivers of lava, metal buckles beneath their feet. At one moment they balance on a thin arm of durasteel, blades spinning in tight, perfect arcs, neither able to break through. At another, they ride a floating platform downstream, locked in combat while fire erupts around them like the physical echo of Anakin's rage. The words that pass between them cut deeper than any blade. Obi-Wan pleads with him to see what he has become, to recognize the slaughtered Jedi in the temple, the dead separatist leaders on this very world. Anakin's answer is bitter and absolute. From his point of view, he says, the Jedi are evil. The order that raised him from a frightened child is now, in his mind, the enemy that tried to control him and let the people he loved die. Obi-Wan's voice finally breaks on the shore, when the duel reaches its last narrow strip of ground. "You were the chosen one," he cries, the prophecy of for 1,000 generations collapsing in a single anguished sentence. Anakin was meant to destroy the Sith, not join them. The reason was simple in Obi-Wan's heart. He loved this man as a brother, and he cannot understand how that promise has become this nightmare. When Obi-Wan gains the high ground, the fight pauses. Wind whips ash between them. Obi-Wan does not gloat, he warns. He begs Anakin not to try it, but arrogance and fear have fused inside Anakin beyond recall. He leaps. The cut is swift. The aftermath is not. Anakin tumbles to the black slope, legs severed, flesh already searing from the heat. He claws at the cinders as fire catches his clothing, as the dark side that promised him power offers no protection from the most ordinary kind of pain. Obi-Wan watches, horrified, unable to finish him and unable to save him. As a result, he chooses the only path he can live with. He takes Anakin's lightsaber, the last relic of the Jedi Knight he once was, and walks away, believing that Anakin Skywalker has died here. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, this is where it seems the tale of Anakin ends. But in the smoke behind him, something else is beginning to breathe. The smoke on Mustafar thins, but the story does not. Obi-Wan walks away believing Anakin has died, yet the dark side is not finished with him. The reason was simple. Palpatine has invested years of grooming, and he will not let his chosen weapon burn on a lava bank. Sidious arrives to a scene of horror. The once proud Jedi Knight, the hero of the Clone Wars, is now a charred shape crawling weakly near the fire, limbs severed, skin blackened, eyes still burning with a faint animal fear. Mechanical troopers move in on command, encasing what is left of Anakin in a mobile medical shell, wiring him to crude life support so his ruined body can survive the journey back to Coruscant. He does not die on Mustafar. He is collected. In the secret medical center, the transformation begins. It is not quick. It is not kind. Surgeons and droids work under Sidious's silent supervision, cutting away dead tissue, grafting cybernetic limbs where flesh once obeyed the Force with effortless grace. Metal replaces bone. Fiber bundles replace muscle. Every choice is deliberate. Every system installed with both utility and control in mind. This is reconstruction as imprisonment. The armor itself is constructed piece by piece. A black shell built to keep him alive and to remind him of his failure. First, the skeletal frame that will bear the weight of the suit. Then the chest panel, dense with controls he will never fully command. Finally, the helmet and mask are lowered. As the seals lock, his world narrows to a red-tinged tunnel. There is a moment of stillness. Then that first mechanical breath echoes through the operating chamber. A deep, unnatural inhalation that will, for 1,000 generations of viewers, define the sound of fear in the galaxy. Canon makes it clear that this is more than life support. Sidious designs the suit as punishment. The systems are intentionally rough. The needles and contact points calibrated to keep nerve endings awake and screaming. The armor is heavy, the joints stiff, limiting his mobility so he will never again move as the free warrior who defied the Jedi Order. As a result, every step he takes will hurt. Every movement will remind him that he is dependent on his master for maintenance, for upgrades, even for the permission to breathe. Only after the body is bound does Sidious shatter what remains of the man. He tells Vader, calmly, that in his anger he killed Padme. The words land harder than the lava. There is a pause, a quiet that feels like the last second before a building collapses. Then the Force explodes outward. Medical tables twist, restraints snap. The room groans, as if the temple of his life is coming down all at once. When the outburst fades, the choice is sealed. From this point on, Anakin's body is a prison, his voice a filtered growl, his name a memory buried beneath armor. The galaxy will come to know only the black figure that rises from that table. And if you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, You will see how thoroughly Darth Vader replaces the Jedi child who once dreamed of saving everyone. When the black figure rises, the galaxy does not yet know his name. It only learns his shadow. Worlds that had cheered the end of the Clone Wars soon discover that peace has a new price, collected by the Emperor's masked enforcer. For 19 years, Darth Vader will be the shape that governments fear seeing in their landing bays. In the first years of the Empire, his purpose is simple. He is the Emperor's fist. When a system hesitates to accept Imperial rule, a Star Destroyer appears, and with it, the tall, silent form in black. He does not argue policy. He does not negotiate terms. The reason was simple. Sidious wants obedience, not debate, and Vader's presence alone turns defiance into trembling compliance. At the same time, another mission unfolds in the dark. Order 66 shattered the Jedi, but it did not erase them. Survivors scattered from temple to frontier, changing names, hiding their connection to the Force, trying to live as farmers, mechanics, wanderers. Vader is sent to finish what the clones began, to turn the great Jedi purge from a moment into an era. He hunts former comrades, commanders, even teachers. In the comics, we see him track down Jocasta Nu, the old temple librarian, because her knowledge threatens the New Order. In Jedi Fallen Order, he arrives like a nightmare at the end of Cal Kestis's journey, a reminder that no matter how far you run, the Empire's shadow is longer. In Obi-Wan Kenobi, he walks calmly through a small town, harming civilians not for strategy, but to draw his former master out. These stories, which we highly recommend exploring, slow down the myth and show the method. Vader works with Inquisitors, broken former Jedi turned hunters, yet he stands apart from them, colder and more absolute. As a result, even they fear him. A single misstep, a hint of mercy, can mean death at his blade. Outwardly, he is the perfect Sith Lord, ruthless, efficient, visibly untroubled as he cuts down those who once fought beside him as clones and knights. But inside the armor, the conflict does not vanish. Memories surface at inconvenient moments. A child in danger, a familiar lightsaber form, the echo of a voice that sounds like Ahsoka or Obi-Wan. He pushes them down with anger, buries them beneath more violence, trying to convince himself that Anakin Skywalker truly died on Mustafar. Yet the Force does not forget. Certain encounters leave small fractures in his certainty, hairline cracks in the black mask he presents to the galaxy. A name spoken, a familiar presence, a glimpse of compassion he cannot quite erase. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, you will see that Anakin is not entirely gone, and soon the galaxy will give him reasons to stir again. Those reasons do not arrive all at once. They come slowly as the Empire reshapes the very idea of what a Force-sensitive life can be, and as Vader helps design that new reality with methodical cruelty. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi had been guardians of peace, scattered across the galaxy as calm points of light. Now, the light is scattered in a different way, fragmented, hunted, forced into shadows. The Jedi Purge begins as a single command, but it cannot remain a single moment. Survivors flee the temple. Padawans slip through the cracks of Order 66. Children who might have been brought to Coruscant are instead hidden on backwater worlds. The reason was simple. Blasters and stormtroopers can kill many, but they cannot reliably sense the Force. So the Emperor creates a specialized answer, a dark mirror of the old order. He calls it the Inquisitorius, The Inquisitors are not faceless soldiers. Many are former Jedi or Temple younglings, broken under torture, tempted with promises of survival, or twisted by careful, patient indoctrination. Others are Force sensitives the Jedi never found, raised under Imperial doctrine instead of Jedi training. In Star Wars Rebels, we see them as numbered hunters. The Grand Inquisitor, the fifth brother, the seventh sister, moving from system to system, sniffing out rumors of lightsabers and meditation cells, turning every whisper of hope into an opportunity for fear. Over all of them stands Vader. He is both mentor and executioner. In the Darth Vader comics, he is tasked with shaping this program, teaching these dark agents how to track, interrogate, and break surviving Jedi. He drills them in combat, forcing them to relive the temple they lost, but now as predators instead of protectors. When they hesitate, he maims them. When they fail, he kills them. As a result, their loyalty is not born from respect, but from terror. Vader shows them how to hunt not only knights, but the fragile threads that might one day become Jedi. He orders the capture of Force-sensitive children, oversees experiments that probe the limits of obedience and pain, and turns what was once the search for Padawans into a systematic culling of potential. We highly recommend exploring those comic arcs if you want to see how coldly efficient this machinery becomes, because on the page you can watch the last embers of the old order being catalogued and extinguished. In public, the Inquisitors are the Empire's new face of mystical power. In private, they are also a shield for Vader's own guilt. Every Jedi they destroy is one more reminder erased, one more voice from the temple silenced before it can speak his old name. He pushes them to embrace cruelty because he needs the galaxy to accept that the Jedi are gone, and he needs himself to believe it. Yet the more tightly he controls this hunt, the more dangerous it becomes when even one quarry slips away. Somewhere, a survivor will not break. Somewhere, a child will not be found. And when that happens, the fractures in Vader's certainty will meet something far stronger than an Inquisitor's fear. Somewhere, a survivor will not break. Somewhere, a child will not be found. And in the quiet years that follow, the Empire convinces itself that these are only small imperfections in an otherwise perfect order. By the time the first Death Star nears completion, the Imperial machine appears unshakable. Worlds submit before the Star Destroyers even emerge from hyperspace. The Jedi are spoken of as traitors or myths, and the Emperor rules from his throne as if he has done so for 1,000 generations. Within this cold hierarchy, Darth Vader is a constant presence, a dark figure who moves between fleets and sectors, enforcing his master's will with mechanical patience. To most of the galaxy, he seems timeless, unchanging, more symbol than man. Inside the armor, the reason was simple. Routine kills questions. Campaign after campaign, inspection after inspection, Vader buries himself in the work of Empire. He hunts rumors of surviving Jedi, crushes dissident cells, and oversees the final steps of the battle station that will make fear itself a governing policy. As a result, the memories of Anakin Skywalker sink deeper, pressed down beneath reports, executions, and the steady hum of his life support systems. Then, something small goes wrong. The Death Star plans are stolen. A single act of defiance, carried out by nameless agents of a scattered rebellion, tears a hole in the illusion of absolute control. At first, for Vader, it is another assignment. Track a blockade runner, retrieve the data, punish those responsible. But in the chaos that follows, new variables appear. A princess who does not break under interrogation. A hidden mentor who feels strangely familiar in the Force. And above all, a young pilot whose presence burns across the void like a sudden flame. On the surface, Luke Skywalker is only a farm boy from a forgotten world, flying an outdated starfighter. Yet when he threads his way through the Death Star trench, guided by something unseen, Vader feels it. The Force moves around the boy with a clarity he has not sensed since the days of the Temple and the Clone Wars. He does not know the name yet, only the echo. The pattern interrupt comes later in the aftermath, when the station is gone and reports begin to circulate. A name attached to the rebel pilot who fired the final shot. Skywalker. It is an ordinary surname to most ears. To Vader, it is impossible. For a moment, the machinery of his certainty stutters. Anakin, the identity he has sworn to bury, is suddenly not just a memory, but a clue. Canon materials suggest that he does not confront Sidious immediately. Instead, he conducts his own quiet investigation, sending agents to Tatooine, sifting Imperial records, tracing the movements of Obi-Wan Kenobi after Order 66. Each fragment points toward a truth the Emperor never intended him to see. Padme did not die alone. The child he believed lost was hidden, raised beyond his reach, allowed to grow strong in the light. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, this is where you can feel the armor begin to crack. The existence of a son is not just a revelation. It is a challenge to the entire story Vader has told himself about fate, loyalty, and the cost of his choices. For the first time in many years, he has something the Emperor did not plan for, a living reason to question whether his obedience must remain absolute. So when we arrive at Cloud City, the confrontation that follows is not just another duel. It is the first real test of what Vader will do now that he knows he has a son. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, you can feel that this encounter carries a different weight than the skirmishes that came before. The duel begins in shadow and steam. Vader moves first. His advance is calm, almost unhurried. The red blade held with the confidence of someone who has hunted Jedi for 1,000 generations. Luke meets him with a blue blade and a rush of movement, but his strikes are wide, emotional, driven by fear and determination, rather than disciplined training. Vader blocks, parries, and presses forward. He is not straining. He is measuring. Again and again, the pattern repeats. Vader drives Luke back through corridors, across platforms, into chambers where the hum of machinery drowns out everything but their breathing. He throws objects with the Force, testing Luke's reactions more than seeking a clean kill. When he disarms him temporarily, he does not end it. The reason was simple. This was an examination, not an execution. Vader is trying to see what kind of Jedi his child has become, and how far he can be pushed before he breaks. That breaking point comes on the narrow gantry above the abyss. Luke is wounded, cornered, and finally disarmed, his hand severed and his lightsaber lost. Vader stands over him, the duel finished, but the real revelation only beginning. What the galaxy believes is that Darth Vader murdered Anakin Skywalker. What Luke believes is that his enemy is the faceless monster who betrayed his father. Vader shatters both stories with a single line. He does not shout it. He simply tells Luke the truth. No, I am your father. In that moment, Luke's entire identity fractures. The heroic Jedi Knight he imagined, The pure division between light and dark, all of it collapses. If Darth Vader is his father, then the darkness is not just out there in the armor. It is in his own bloodline, in his own potential. Then comes the offer. Vader speaks of overthrowing the Emperor, of ending their servitude, of ruling the galaxy as father and son. On the surface, it is a bid for power. Beneath that, it is something more fragile. A man who once lost everything to forbidden attachment, now reaching for a new bond that might free him from being only the Emperor's weapon. As a result, turning Luke is also a way of imagining escape from his own prison. Luke refuses. Faced with the choice to stand beside his father in darkness or fall alone, he lets go and drops into the void. The wind roars. The gantry empties. Vader reaches out, one gloved hand extended into nothing, calling after a son who chose the unknown rather than his outstretched promise. In the silence that follows, he is left once more in mechanical breathing and metal corridors, with a question that will not leave him. If his son would rather fall than join him, what does that say about the path he walks now? We highly recommend exploring what happens next, because this single moment of refusal will echo through every decision Vader makes from here on. In the long stretch between Cloud City and the second Death Star, the galaxy sees only a black figure moving through starfields and corridors. Fleets still kneel, officers still tremble. But inside the armor, something has shifted, and the reason was simple. For the first time since Mustafar, someone Anakin Skywalker loved had chosen death over joining Darth Vader. Vader returns from Bespin with more than a damaged hand and a failed plan. He carries a new kind of wound, one that the Bacta tanks cannot touch. Luke's refusal forces him to face a truth he has spent years burying beneath metal and obedience. Not everyone will trade principle for power. Not everyone will make the same bargain he made in that burning temple, when he slaughtered Jedi and child alike to save Padme and secure his place at Sidious's side. For Vader, this is more than an insult. It is an accusation. If his son can endure torture, the vast pull of the dark side, and the shattering revelation of his parentage, yet still throw himself into the abyss rather than rule, then perhaps Anakin's fall was not inevitable. Perhaps it was a choice. As a result, every step he takes down Imperial corridors now echoes with a quiet, unwelcome question about what kind of man lives inside the mask. Canon stories set in this era let us sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold inside his mind. In the comics, Vader privately marvels at Luke's strength, feeling a dark, twisted pride that his bloodline has produced a Jedi capable of surviving him. At the same time, he rages at Sidious, who hid the existence of his child, and who now seeks to claim Luke as a new apprentice. In some scenes, Vader imagines striking down his master, not out of mercy, but to rule with his son and finally escape the Emperor's shadow. Yet even those fantasies reveal how trapped he feels. The suit is life support and prison, a constant reminder of Mustafar and of the temple he once defended for 1,000 generations, but then helped defile. His mechanical breathing fills the silence where the Force once flowed freely through a hopeful young knight. He is powerful, but not free, bound to Sidious by fear, bound to the Empire by duty, bound to the memory of Anakin Skywalker by Luke's voice calling him father. This battle is almost completely invisible to the galaxy. Star systems see only the enforcer of the Sith Order, not the man replaying a son's leap in the privacy of a meditation chamber. But this quiet conflict is what prepares the throne room on the second Death Star to become more than a political showdown. It will be the final test of the man within the armor, where Anakin must choose between his master and his son, and the Force will not allow him to stand in the middle forever. By the time the second Death Star rose over the forest moon of Endor, the quiet war inside Darth Vader had already begun. Outside, it looked simple. A new battle station, a new superweapon, a final chance for the Emperor to tighten his grip on the galaxy. The situation at the start of Return of the Jedi is almost ritualistic. The Empire constructs a second Death Star in orbit, its skeletal frame wrapped around a still-exposed core. The Emperor himself travels there, abandoning the distant safety of Coruscant to oversee its completion. The reason was simple. This was more than a military project. It was a stage, a place where he could end the rebellion and reshape the Skywalker line in a single stroke. On the other side, the Alliance gathers everything it has left. Mon Calamari cruisers, starfighters, the last reserves of pilots and leaders who have been fighting, in some cases since the fall of the Jedi Temple. For 1,000 generations, open war with the Sith had been a memory, not a present reality. Now they prepare a desperate assault on the shield generator on Endor, believing that if they can destroy the station before it is finished, the Emperor's reign will finally crack. Into this careful arrangement, Luke Skywalker does something no strategist would recommend. He walks alone into the forest, surrenders to an Imperial patrol, and asks to be taken to Darth Vader. He is no longer the uncertain farm boy or the half-trained child of Hoth. His Jedi training has deepened, his calm is more genuine, and yet his greatest weapon here is not the lightsaber at his belt. It is his belief that there is still good in his father. The quiet conversation between them on the landing platform and in the turbo lift to the Death Star is one of the most revealing moments in their story. Vader stands chained to duty, speaking of the Emperor's will and the power of the dark side. Luke answers with something simpler. He calls him Father, insists that Anakin Skywalker still exists, and offers escape. Vader's responses carry denial, but also a faint, almost reluctant admiration. He tells Luke his skills are complete. He acknowledges that the Emperor has foreseen Luke's arrival. As a result, every line sounds like both a warning and a compliment. Sidious has designed this encounter with precision. He intends to use Luke's compassion, his fear of losing his friends, and the raw anger that killed Anakin's mother in the desert, to turn him just as he once turned the father. He places them together in the throne room, knowing that attachment will pull them toward a lethal conflict. Son against father, Jedi against Sith, each blow meant to break the other's soul. So as you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, the stage is now fully set. The shield, the fleet, the throne room, and the man inside the armor all converge on a single decision. What happens next will decide the fate of the rebellion and reveal, at last, who Anakin Skywalker truly is. The throne room is quiet at first, cold, precise. Black metal and polished surfaces frame a single vast window that looks out into the stars and the slow battle beyond. The light from distant explosions flickers across the floor like distant memories, while the Emperor sits in his chair, perfectly still, as if he has been waiting here for 1,000 generations. This is not a battlefield in the usual sense. It is a stage. The reason was simple. Sidious preferred to win long before the blades ever crossed. His voice is low, almost gentle, as he speaks to Luke, explaining how his friends are doomed, how the rebellion will fall, how resistance is meaningless. Each word is a careful cut, meant to separate the son from the calm center of the force he has tried to hold. Luke ignites his saber only when he can no longer bear the thought of his friends dying outside. He lunges once, a flash of green against Vader's red, and the duel begins among the shadows and control panels. Yet even as they clash, Luke tries to pull back. He hides. He speaks to his father. He insists he will not turn, that he is a Jedi, trained by Obi-Wan and Yoda, and that there is still light within the armored figure advancing toward him. Sidious watches, amused, and continues to prod the wound. He urges Luke to strike him down, to take his place, to end the conflict with one act of hatred. Luke feels the temptation, feels how easy it would be to end this old tyrant and save the galaxy. Instead, he does the unthinkable in Sith eyes. He powers down his weapon and throws it aside, declaring that he will not be the Emperor's executioner. For a moment, it seems as if mercy has ended the fight, but Vader reaches further, sensing what Luke tries to shield. A sister, another child of Anakin Skywalker, hidden from the temple, hidden from the Order, hidden from him. Vader's words are quiet, almost curious, as he wonders what would happen if she were turned instead. As a result, Luke's control shatters. The attack that follows is nothing like his earlier restraint. It is raw, furious, filled with the same fear and attachment that once drove Anakin to darkness. Luke batters Vader backward, strike after strike, until the black figure falls and a mechanical hand is severed, wires sparking where flesh once was. Luke stands over his father, saber raised for the killing blow. Then he sees it, the exposed machinery, the broken stump that mirrors his own gloved hand. In that instant, the story of Anakin's life collapses into a single choice. Luke looks from his artificial fingers to his father's ruined arm and understands where this path leads. He steps back. He turns off the blade. He throws it away again, but this time with full awareness, and says the words that define him. He is a Jedi, like his father before him. Sidious responds with pure hatred. Blue Force lightning engulfs Luke, arcing across the cold floor, filling the chamber with the smell of burning cloth and the sound of a child screaming for his father. Vader does not move at first. He watches, torn between the habit of obedience and the echo of a love he thought long dead. The Emperor's laughter, the sight of Luke writhing in agony, and the plea of "Father, please," finally break something that armor could not protect. In that silent, decisive moment, Anakin Skywalker begins to return. Vader does not speak when he finally moves. He simply turns, one slow step at a time, toward the source of Luke's agony. The reason was simple. For the first time in decades, the voice that mattered most was not his master's command, but his child's plea. Lightning explodes across the throne room as Sidious pours the dark side into Luke. It spills over, wild and uncontrolled, lashing against black armor and scarred machinery. Vader walks directly into it. Each step is deliberate. Each breath is a ragged mechanical effort. The blue-white bolts crawl over his chest plate, burn into exposed wiring, and stab through the gaps in his suit, sending pain through flesh that has already known fire. He does not raise a hand to defend himself. He reaches for the Emperor instead. When he lifts Sidious, it is not a graceful motion. It is heavy, almost clumsy, the movement of ruined limbs forced to act by will alone. Lightning rakes his helmet and pours into his systems, overloading circuits, cooking him from the inside. He holds on. He turns toward the reactor shaft, and begins that final shuffling walk, carrying the most powerful Sith Lord in the galaxy, like a burden he has finally chosen to bear. In that march, he accepts a death he cannot escape, so that Luke might. This is where the old prophecy finally resolves. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi believed balance to the Force meant the dominance of their order and the absence of the Sith. Qui-Gon saw something different in the child born of no father, conceived, as Shmi said, by the will of the Force itself. Anakin was not created to preserve the Jedi Temple or to guarantee their power. He was created to end the cycle that Sidious represented. By destroying the Emperor and sacrificing himself, Anakin does what no other Jedi or Sith could. He severs the specific Sith lineage that began with Darth Bane and culminated in Darth Sidious. Two there always were. Now, in one act, there are none. As a result, the dark side loses its singular, coordinating will. The Force settles, not into perfect peace, but into a truer balance than the galaxy has known in centuries. In this moment, Vader, as a separate identity, simply cannot survive. The mask, the title, the years of service to the Empire are still there, but the choice is not Vader's. It is Anakin Skywalker who acts. The same young man who defied the Council to protect people, who broke rules out of compassion, now breaks his chains for the sake of his son. He reclaims the love and attachment that once doomed him and allows them, finally, to save him. Official canon makes this explicit. George Lucas himself has said that Anakin is the chosen one, and that he fulfills the prophecy when he kills the Emperor. Later stories may complicate the long-term balance, but they do not erase this moment. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold across films, animation, and commentary, the pattern holds. This is the pivot. To the wider galaxy, what dies on the Death Star is Darth Vader, the Emperor's enforcer, the terror that hunted the Jedi. There is no funeral for Anakin Skywalker in any public square, no proclamation that the Chosen One has returned. But the Force does not need announcements. It feels the fracture heal. It recognizes a Jedi standing where a Sith once knelt. And yet, as Luke drags his father's broken body away from the edge, another question rises quietly in the dark. What becomes of a soul that has been both monster and savior? There is no anthem for what comes next. No clash of sabers, no roaring crowd. There is only a son, breathing hard, dragging the ruined weight of his father's armor through the failing corridors of a dying battle station. Luke stumbles as sparks rain from the ceiling. Alarms blare. The Death Star groans around them like a wounded beast. It would be easier to run alone. It would be safer to let the Empire's monster die where he fell. But Luke refuses. The reason was simple. He has not come this far to abandon Anakin Skywalker a second time. For a moment, you can almost see another hallway, a Jedi temple long ago, where a frightened child once walked between towering masters, wondering if he belonged. Now that child is a shattered giant, and his own son is the one refusing to let go. This is what attachment looks like when it is finally healed instead of punished. They reach a quiet platform, away from the stampede of troopers and the thunder of distant explosions. Here, the story narrows to two voices. Vader's breathing is ragged, each mechanical gasp a reminder of how much of him has been machine, how long the galaxy has known only the mask. Then he asks the unthinkable. He does not ask for more power, or for the Emperor's throne, or for forgiveness from the Jedi Order. He simply asks Luke to remove the mask so he can look on his son with his own eyes. He knows what it will cost. Without the helmet, the suit cannot sustain him for long. As a result, this is a request for death, spoken gently. Luke hesitates. There is fear there, not of Vader, but of losing him again so soon after finding the man beneath the monster. Still, he reaches forward. Locks release with soft, final clicks. The black shell that terrified the galaxy lifts away. The face beneath is not a horror to revel in. It is pale, scarred, fragile, the skin drawn tight by years of pain and inadequate healing. This is what remains after Mustafar, after Sidious's deliberate cruelty, after decades inside a prison of armor designed to hurt as much as it helped. It is not a demon's visage. It is the exhausted face of Anakin Skywalker, at last unmasked. Pattern interrupt. For 1,000 generations, Jedi were taught to see the dark side as something outside, an enemy to be cut down. Here, Luke sees that sometimes the darkness is a wounded human being who has forgotten his own name. Anakin's eyes are clear. He does not argue with Luke's choices. He does not try to pull him back to the throne room. Instead, he offers the one thing Luke has needed to hear since Bespin, that he was right. There was still good in him. With those words, Luke's lonely faith is vindicated. The circle closes. From a boy insisting there is light in the dark, to a father confirming that light with his final breath. Luke leaves because he must. He carries the armor, but the man inside is already gone. As the Death Star blossoms into fire behind him, Luke escapes into the starry quiet, holding not just the shell of Darth Vader, but the knowledge that Anakin Skywalker died as he was meant to be, a Jedi, redeemed. And if you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, you can feel the Force itself exhale. The battle is over, but the story does not end with fire in space. It settles instead into something quieter. On the forest moon of Endor, night gathers around the rebel camp, and the celebration feels almost small compared to the scale of what has just happened. There are drums made from scavenged parts. There are Ewoks dancing around towering bonfires. Leia laughs with Han. Chewbacca roars in triumph. For a child of the Clone Wars, this is a kind of peace Anakin Skywalker never knew. Yet in the middle of that music and movement, Luke steps away from the light. He walks to the edge of the trees, letting the noise fall behind him. The flames flicker against the leaves. The air is still. And there, in that thin, quiet space between the living and the unseen, the Force opens. 3 familiar shapes resolve out of the darkness. Yoda, small and serene. Obi-Wan, calm and watchful. And beside them, the man Luke has just burned on a funeral pyre. Anakin stands with them. On the surface, this is the simple, gentle reward for Luke's compassion. But the reason was simple only from Luke's point of view. Within the lore of the Jedi, what you are seeing is far more radical. The man who hunted Jedi, who marched into the temple with clone troopers at his back, now appears in the same luminous company as the masters he betrayed. As a result, his presence as a Force ghost is not just a sign of personal redemption. It is an acceptance into the same spiritual legacy that had once rejected and failed him. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi dreamed of becoming one with the Force, retaining identity after death through discipline, training, and selflessness. Anakin's life seemed to move in the opposite direction, yet in his final, decisive act, destroying the Sith to save his son, he aligns himself with that ancient current so completely that the Force itself remembers him. Different versions of the films show this in different ways. In the original release, Luke sees an older Anakin, scarred by time but peaceful, wearing the age he would naturally have had. In the later edition, he sees a younger Anakin, the face from the end of the Clone Wars, unchanged by Mustafa's fire. Each image carries its own truth. One suggests that the man who died on the Death Star is the one who stands there. The other suggests that the core of who he truly was, the hopeful knight before the fall, is what the Force chooses to reveal. Either way, the message is the same. The past is not erased. The temple still burned. The clones still turned. The galaxy still carries the marks of his fear and attachment. But the Star Wars mythos insists that even after immense harm, there remains the possibility of return if a person finally chooses the light without reservation. That choice does not undo what was done. It changes what comes after. So when you see Anakin watching over his son, you are seeing more than a comforting image. You are seeing a former slave no longer owned by anyone. You are seeing a former Sith Lord no longer trapped in armor, designed as both prison and punishment. You are seeing the chosen one no longer crushed beneath the weight of prophecy. In this form, Anakin Skywalker is simply himself within the Force, at last free to sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold beyond him. From that peaceful image within the Force, it is tempting to imagine that everything which came before was simple: a good order, a fallen student, a clear line between light and dark. But the story of Anakin and the Jedi is not that clean. It is the story of a temple and a child, both unprepared for what the galaxy was about to demand of them. By the time Anakin entered the Jedi Order, the institution was already in decline. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi had served as distant guardians, moving carefully above politics. Now they sat in the Chancellor's office, debated in the Senate, and commanded armies across the stars. The reason was simple. The Republic was crumbling, and the Jedi believed that stepping into war was the only way to save it. As a result, their quiet monastic life twisted into something more rigid, more fearful, and less able to adapt. Under older traditions, Jedi training began when children were so young that family bonds had barely formed. Attachment was gently redirected toward the Order as a whole. Anakin arrived with a lifetime of memories of his mother, with slavery, separation, and fear already carved into him. The Council sensed the danger, but tried to solve it with the same old tools: meditation, discipline, distance. Their strict rules on attachment and emotion were meant to prevent corruption. Instead, they left Anakin with almost no space to speak honestly about love, about nightmares, or about the anger that surged through him when he remembered chains. He was told not to fear loss. He was told not to cling. But he was not really shown how to grieve. This is where the system failed him most clearly. Not in one cruel decision, but in a pattern of misalignment between what the Order expected and what this particular Jedi needed. The Council kept him at arm's length, sensing both his potential and his instability. They made him a knight. They praised him as a war hero, yet they withheld the rank of master and whispered their doubts in private sessions he was never allowed to hear. Then came their most damaging choice. When Palpatine asked that Anakin sit on the Council, the Jedi agreed, but secretly asked Anakin to spy on the Chancellor. On paper, it was a strategic move in a desperate war. To Anakin, it confirmed his darkest suspicion, that he was useful but never truly trusted. that the Order would bend its own code when convenient, then judge him harshly when he did the same. This is not about vilifying the Jedi. Most of them were sincere, compassionate, and genuinely devoted to the light side of the Force. Their intentions were good. Their structure was not. A one-size-fits-all system, designed for children taken at birth, could not hold space for a traumatized prodigy raised in slavery and thrust into command. When he did not fit their expectations, they tightened the rules instead of widening their understanding. You may recognize this pattern beyond the galaxy, far, far away. Institutions that work well for most can still wound those who fall outside the mold. Schools, families, even spiritual communities can become so focused on preserving their traditions that they miss the individual in front of them, asking for help in a language they do not quite understand. If you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, Anakin's fall becomes more than a tale of one man's choices. It becomes a quiet warning about what happens when systems forget how to truly see the people they are meant to protect. When you look closely at Anakin's life, one thread runs quietly through every chapter. It is not anger at first. It is not ambition. It is fear of losing the people he loves, and the terror of being unable to stop it once it begins. As a child on Tatooine, Anakin lives every day knowing his mother can be sold, beaten, or taken, and he cannot do anything. He leaves with Qui-Gon, but she stays behind in chains. The reason was simple. The Jedi could not intervene in every injustice in the galaxy. For Anakin, that decision plants a belief that will never fully leave him, that noble rules and ancient codes mean nothing if they cannot save the one person crying out in front of you. Years later, that belief is carved into him with a single wound. He finds Shmi dying in the Tusken camp, held up by chains, broken by torture he arrived too late to prevent. He holds her as the life fades from her eyes. In that moment, fear stops being an abstract feeling and becomes a lived certainty. If he is not strong enough, if he is not fast enough, everyone he loves will die while he watches. As a result, Anakin's fear of loss turns into a craving for absolute control. The Jedi teach surrender to the Force, trust in the living will that has guided them for 1,000 generations. Anakin hears those words, but his body remembers being a powerless child, kneeling in the sand. So when visions of Padmé's death begin to haunt his sleep, he does not want acceptance. He wants a power that can reach into the future and rewrite it. This is why the dark side's promise is so seductive. Palpatine does not begin with talk of domination or hatred. He speaks softly about saving Padmé, about legends of Sith who could keep the ones they cared about from dying. He offers Anakin a story where control is no longer a sin, but a duty. If he is the chosen one, if he is the only one strong enough, then he must seize whatever power is necessary. Over time, Anakin's identity fuses with this savior role. He is the hero of the Clone Wars, the general who wins impossible battles, the knight who rescues his friends when the Order hesitates. Every success confirms the same lesson. When he takes charge, people live. When he obeys, people die. So any failure is not just a mistake in judgment. It feels like a moral collapse, proof that he has betrayed his purpose. Palpatine studies this pattern and turns it into a weapon. He reframes Anakin's fear and attachment as virtues the Jedi are too blind to appreciate. Breaking the code to marry Padmé is not weakness. It is proof of deeper compassion. Distrusting the Council is not arrogance. It is clarity. Killing Dooku, executing prisoners, even slaughtering Jedi in the temple can all be reinterpreted as terrible but necessary sacrifices to build a safer galaxy for the people Anakin loves. By the time Mace Windu confronts Palpatine, Anakin has already accepted this new narrative. Saving Padme justifies everything. Stopping Windu is not betrayal, it is preventing another Shmi, another helpless death he is forced to watch. In that instant, the need for control finally outweighs every remaining boundary, and he steps fully into the dark. It is easy to see Anakin's fall as distant and monstrous, but the roots of it are painfully human. Most people know what it is to fear losing someone, or to feel responsible for holding everything together. The difference is scale and the presence of power without peace. As we move into the final stages of his transformation, it may be worth quietly noticing where fear and control whisper in our own choices, not to condemn ourselves alongside Anakin, but to understand how even the strongest intentions can warp when they are driven by terror of grief rather than acceptance of it. In the next part of this story, that desperate bargain for control will meet its true cost, as the new Darth Vader discovers what it really means to trade away everything for the promise of saving just one life. Sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold as the armored figure the galaxy fears takes shape around the frightened boy who could not bear to lose his mother. From here, it is tempting to let the armor finish the transformation. Vader walks out of the operating chamber, the voice deep and mechanical, the movement slow and implacable, and the story seems simple. A monster has replaced a man. Worlds will burn, Jedi will fall, and the frightened child from Tatooine will disappear beneath black durasteel. But the reason was simple. Reality is not that clean. Darth Vader does commit horrors that echo across the galaxy. He leads the purge of the Jedi Temple, cutting down Padawans who once looked up to him. He oversees the slaughter on Mustafar. Later, he strangles subordinates, tortures Han and Leia on Cloud City, and stands beside Tarkin as Alderaan is erased in a single flash. These are not accidents of war. They are choices, and no amount of context can bring those lives back. At the same time, those choices do not grow out of nowhere. For 1,000 generations, the Jedi believed that their training, their temple, and their order could shape any child into a guardian of peace. Anakin arrives as a former slave, already shaped by chains, by a bomb in his body, by the knowledge that his mother is still owned while he walks free. The Council senses the fear wrapped around his attachment, but their system has no gentle place to set it down. As a result, the wounds simply follow him into knighthood. War then turns those wounds into habits. The Clone Wars reward his aggression, promote him for bending rules, and place a boy who once fixed pod racers in charge of fleets. Each victory teaches him that control, not patience, saves lives. Each loss, from his mother's death among the Tusken Raiders to Ahsoka's departure from the Order, confirms his belief that the Jedi way means watching helplessly while everyone he loves slips away. Into that space steps Palpatine, the one voice that never tells him to let go. From the Senate office to the Opera House, the Chancellor offers stories of Darth Plagueis, promises of power over death, and the quiet suggestion that the Jedi are using him. When Anakin dreams of Padme dying, this manipulation finally finds its anchor. By the time he kneels and becomes Darth Vader, he has convinced himself that every crime is a tax paid in blood to prevent an even greater pain. So even inside the armor, Anakin is not entirely gone. He is trapped in a prison he helped build, terrified that if he stops, if he hesitates, the universe will take the last scraps of love from him again. Understanding this does not absolve him. It simply reminds you that great darkness often grows from very human roots. Fear, grief, and the belief that no one will help you unless you seize the Force for yourself. Seen this way, his final turn against the Emperor is not a sudden twist, but the quiet end of a long argument inside his own mind. A last, desperate reach back toward the boy who loved his mother and his son. And in the next part of this story, we will follow that argument through the long, cold years between Mustafar and Endor, as the mask of Darth Vader hardens, while the faint, unwelcome light of Anakin Skywalker refuses to go out. Through all of that, one quiet question hangs in the background. Which Anakin are we actually following? The boy from the films, the warrior from the animated series, or the haunted figure from darker pages of the comics? In truth, this story we have been tracing is built on a specific foundation. Most of what you have heard tonight comes from official canon, the prequel films that show his rise and fall, the original trilogy that reveals the mask's final crack, the Clone Wars that fills in the years of battle and friendship, and Rebels, where the ghost of Anakin meets his former Padawan in the shattered temple on Malachor. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series adds a wounded, furious Vader, still obsessed with his old master, and the canonical novels and comics deepen the long, cold corridor between Mustafar and Endor. Before Disney reshaped the continuity, there was another layer known as legends. Those stories imagined additional missions for Vader, other Jedi survivors, and different paths through the same war-torn galaxy. In some of them, his inner thoughts were more explicit. In others, his role in the fate of the Order and the balance of the Force took stranger turns. The details shifted, but the outline remained familiar. A fallen hero, bound by fear and attachment, walking in armor that felt like a prison. Canon has its own quiet expansions. In one Vader comic arc, he enters a vision space built from the dark side, walking through memories of the Jedi Temple and the burning sands of Tatooine, hunting the last trace of Anakin Skywalker. In another, he confronts an echo of Padme through her handmaiden Sabe, and for a moment the mask seems to hesitate, as if the child who loved her on Naboo is still listening. There are scenes where he sees himself as he was on Mustafar, eyes yellow, saber raised, and must decide whether that man was truly him or only a shadow. If you are still awake and your mind wants more, we highly recommend exploring these series and comics, because they turn brief moments from the films into long, reflective journeys. But if your eyes are growing heavy, you do not need any of that to feel the emotional truth of this story. The reason was simple. The core has always been clear. For 1,000 generations, Star Wars has told many kinds of myths, yet Anakin's remains one of its most constant shapes. A child born in the desert, discovered by the Jedi, and brought to the temple. A hero of a terrible war, praised and feared. A Sith Lord in black armor, enforcing the Emperor's will. And finally, a father who chose, at the end, to save his child. So as we move forward into the long years of Darth Vader's reign, you can sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, knowing that whatever path we take through canon or memory, we are still walking beside the same broken, stubborn heart. In the middle of all this armor and fire, Anakin's story quietly turns into something else. It stops being only about a fallen Jedi and starts to sound uncomfortably like a mirror. Not because any of us will ignite a blade in a temple, but because the same currents that moved him through the galaxy move in smaller and safer ways. Through ordinary lives, Anakin is a child who never really gets to put his pain down. He leaves his mother, but the grief never leaves him. He wins battles, but the fear of loss only grows sharper. When Shmi dies in his arms, that wound goes unhealed. The reason was simple. The people around him either could not see the depth of it or did not know how to sit with it. As a result, that buried pain twists into rage on Tatooine, and later into desperate bargains in Palpatine's office. Unprocessed pain does not vanish. It hardens. It hides under noble intentions and good deeds, and then, when fear spikes, it reaches for control. Anakin's vow to never fail again sounds heroic on the surface, but underneath it is a terrified boy who could not save his mother and cannot imagine losing Padme. When the Force shows him visions of her death, he does not slow down to grieve. He accelerates. He clings. And the tighter he holds, the more dangerous his attachment becomes. Around him, the Jedi Order stands as an ancient institution, confident in forms that have worked for 1,000 generations. Their training is designed for children raised from infancy, not for a former slave who already knows love, fear, and possession. They sense the storm in him, but they answer it with distance and rules. The council withholds trust. The temple offers discipline instead of healing. While they hold their line, a different system adapts very quickly. Palpatine listens, validates, and reshapes his story into one of persecution and secret destiny. This tension between institutions and individuals is not limited to the Jedi. When a system cannot bend, it risks breaking its most intense members. Anakin does not wake up one morning and hate the Order. He slowly concludes that it will never understand or protect what he loves. In that gap, the dark side waits with simple answers. Someone finally says, yes, your fear makes sense. Yes, your love matters. Here is power to keep it safe. Honest connection might have changed that path. If Obi-Wan had been allowed to speak to him not only as a master but as a brother, if Anakin had felt safe to say, I am seeing Padme die and I am terrified, the story could have slowed down. A single night where he is heard instead of judged might not erase his wounds, but it could have given him another script besides secrecy and control. Even in the Clone Wars, the moments where he is most balanced are the ones where someone truly sees him. Ahsoka's trust, Rex's loyalty, Padme's quiet understanding. For most people, the stakes are far smaller. There are no Sith Lords in the Senate, no prophetic visions, no star destroyers waiting in orbit. But the pattern is familiar in miniature. Fear of losing a job, a relationship, a place in a family. Old hurts from childhood that never found words. Systems that say, be grateful, when someone is actually drowning. Anakin's story can be a gentle reminder to look at those places with more softness, in ourselves and in others. So as you sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold, it may help to notice that Star Wars keeps offering two paths in one family. In Anakin, we see the part that is frightened, angry, and certain that only control can keep anyone safe. In Luke, we see the part that feels the same fear and still chooses compassion, even for a masked stranger on a throne room floor. Both live side by side in the same bloodline, and, in a quieter way, in the same listener. The next time fear rises, Anakin's life suggests one small question. Which part will you let answer? From here, As we follow Vader deeper into the dark corridors of the Imperial era, we will keep that question close, watching how often the man inside the armor still reaches, almost against his will, for the light he once abandoned. So before we follow him any further into those corridors, it helps to step back and see the whole path that led him there. The armor, the title of Darth Vader, the terror he inspired across the galaxy. All of it began with a quiet mystery in a desert hut. Anakin Skywalker entered the story as a child with no father, conceived, as Shmi said, by the will of the Force itself. A slave on Tatooine, he fixed engines by day and stared at the stars by night, dreaming of freedom for himself and his mother. When Qui-Gon Jinn found him, the reason was simple. The Jedi Master sensed a presence in the Force unlike anything he had felt in years. The Council hesitated. He was too old, too attached, too afraid. But the prophecy of the Chosen One, the one who would bring balance, opened a door the temple had kept closed for 1,000 generations. From there, his life became a series of ascents that always hid a drop. He left his mother behind and entered Jedi training, first as an outsider among younglings, then as Obi-Wan's Padawan. War accelerated everything. As the Clone Wars erupted, Anakin became a brilliant general, the kind of leader clones would follow into impossible battles. His bond with Obi-Wan deepened into something like family, and when he took Ahsoka Tano as his Padawan, he finally saw himself on the other side of that training bond. Together, they saved worlds. Together, they bent rules. As a result, he felt more alive on the battlefield than in the council chamber. Amid all of this, there was Padme. Their secret marriage was a refuge, a small apartment on Coruscant where the war could not quite reach him. But that love, forbidden by the Order, also sharpened every fear. Nightmares of losing her echoed the pain of his mother's death on Tatooine, and Palpatine stood ready to use that wound, promising powers the Jedi called impossible. When the visions grew worse, Anakin reached for anything that might save her. He chose Palpatine over Mace Windu, struck down a Jedi Master, and watched the temple burn under his own blade. Order 66 ended the Jedi as he had known them. Mustafar ended Anakin as he had known himself. Broken on the lava shore, he rose again inside black armor that kept him alive in constant pain. As Darth Vader, he hunted the surviving Jedi, enforced the Emperor's will, and turned his back on the name Anakin Skywalker. Yet the existence of Luke began to pull at something buried. A son who believed there was still good in him became a quiet pattern, interrupt in his otherwise merciless routine. Each encounter widened the crack between Anakin and Vader. In the end, standing between Palpatine and Luke, he chose. He turned on his master, destroyed the Sith, and died in his son's arms. In that moment, the frightened child, the fallen knight, and the masked enforcer finally aligned. The Chosen One fulfilled the prophecy, and the circle of his life, defined by love and fear, closed in the light. From here, as we move into the final phase of his legacy, sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold around what that single decision meant for Luke, for the Jedi, and for the galaxy he left behind. For Luke, for the Jedi, and for the galaxy he left behind. And for you, listening now, wherever you are in that space between waking and sleep. You might be fully alert, tracing each moment in Anakin's life. You might be half drifting, catching only fragments of the story as your thoughts wander. Or you might be almost gone, only hearing a voice and the faint echo of a galaxy far, far away. All of that is enough. You do not need to remember every battle, every council meeting in the temple, every choice made in fear or love. The story will still be here, waiting whenever you return. For 1,000 generations, tales like this have been told in pieces, half heard by firesides and forgotten until morning. Anakin's life is a reminder that people are rarely just one thing. He was the hopeful child on Tatooine, the gifted Jedi Knight, the broken man on Mustafar, and the armored figure who made star systems tremble. The reason was simple, and also terribly complicated. The same heart that loved too fiercely also feared too deeply, and as a result, his attachment became the doorway through which the dark side entered. Understanding that path does not excuse what he did. It does not erase the younglings in the temple, the clones turned against their generals, or the years he spent hunting survivors of the order he once called home. But when we walk the road with him, from slave to general, from Vader to a father holding his son, we see the full shape of a person, and our empathy grows without our judgment disappearing. If you feel like it when you wake, or if you are still quietly awake now, you are welcome to share your own sense of the turning points. For you, when did Anakin truly become Darth Vader? Was it in the flames of Mustafar, in the moment Mace Windu fell, or earlier, in the silence after his mother died? Or on the other side of that long night, when do you feel he truly returned? On the second Death Star, or somewhere much smaller and more human, in a single look at Luke? There is no pressure to answer. You can simply let the questions drift past, like ships sliding into hyperspace. But if you find comfort in this kind of quiet lore, in following one life through the currents of the Force, we highly recommend exploring more. More stories of Jedi and Sith, more long-form journeys where you can sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold at their own unhurried pace. As this one comes to a close, imagine the soft blue glow of Anakin's lightsaber, humming gently in the dark. Then imagine it dimming, the blade sliding away until only the faint outline of a redeemed knight remains. May your night be the same, bright for a moment, then peaceful, then still. Rest well. May the Force be with you. And somewhere, just beyond sleep, remember, Anakin's story is over, but another presence in this galaxy is already waiting to be found.